This episode of Liquor and Literature takes place during the golden age of Hollywood and deals with themes of sexism, misogyny, racism, and mentions of suicide. As hosts, we strive to have fun and educational discussions about the books we cover and do not condone any politically incorrect terms or dated ideology. We strive to discuss these issues in ways that will not alienate or suppress others, but will be covering themes that may not be suitable for children. Also, cuss words are a part of our regular vocabulary and drinks will be had, so keep that in mind if you are sensitive to liquored up loudmouths. Welcome to Liquor and Literature. We are a podcast, a book club, and a happy hour. My name is Lauren.
I'm Amber.
I'm Sam.
And if you haven't joined us before, welcome. And if you have, welcome back. Basically, once a month, we read a book, and then we kind of break down that book and talk about the author and do a movie adaptation, if there is one. And, you know, we drink as we do it. So it's rather fun. We like it. Hope you like it, too. Also, there's always going to be spoilers just because, like I said, we are talking about a book. So if you don't like spoilers, you could read the book ahead of time. If you don't care, just keep on playing. So this month was my pick, and I picked The Lady from the Black Lagoon. It is basically a biography. So we're dabbing our toes into nonfiction again, which, you know, I like that. Kind of, you know,
Something different.
Something different, exactly. And the reason why I picked this is, if you didn't know, I'm a big film nerd. I really like classic Hollywood. And I'm also a big horror movie / monster nerd. And this book is all about the lady who was behind the design of the creature from the Black Lagoon's costume and how she basically was unwritten from history because of fucking patriarchy. And so the author kind of is uncovering her story, which I think is really cool. I'm excited. How about you guys?
Yeah.
Of course, always.
Sam and Amber are also big horror movie fans. And Sam actually told me, isn't the creature your favorite Universal monster?
He is my favorite.
Yeah. She showed up today with her little Creature from the Black Lagoon shirt.
And there's a sticker on my car. I don't know if you ever noticed.
Oh, yeah. I think I saw that one. And then Amber has Creature from the Black Lagoon socks on.
I do.
And I have some Creature from the Black Lagoon patches on my vest. So you know what? We are repping the creature. We fucking love him. The creature. The Gill Man.
Yes.
And with that, why don't we dive into the drink pairing for today?
So I don't know if you guys know, but or if we've talked about it or not, but I'm a huge procrastinator. So I literally made this up, and it was the first try, and it actually turned out pretty good. So we went with it.
I thought it was delicious.
It's very refreshing.
Yeah, I got some ideas off. It was like a combo of some kind of lime and mint spritz or something like that. I don't remember. And then I saw a kiwi margarita, and I kind of joined things together, and I was like, all right, let's go with it. So I'm going to call this the Gilman's El Refresco, or for the people that don't speak Spanish, and hopefully I did that right because I don't speak Spanish. It's the Gilman's Refreshment. So I chose a tequila for this. We hadn't done tequila yet, and the lady we will be talking about, she spent a lot of her early childhood in South and Central America. Mm-hmm. So I decided to go with that. Plus, also, there was only like really 2 drinks that were mentioned, which one was mimosas, and I was like, meh, not fun enough. And
I personally don't like mimosas, so I'm glad you didn't do that. Plus, it's kind of boring.
It is boring.
So.
I mean, I love a good mimosa, but, you know, it's not brunch. So
She wasn't really drinking mimosas anyway, was she? Again?
She was just drinking champagne.
Yeah, she just wanted champagne.
Champagne.
Plus, champagne makes me boip, and I already burp a lot anyway.
That's
so
fair.
if you want to hear me belch a lot, then give me some champagne.
And the only other one that I recall was a scotch and soda that she was drinking, and I hate scotch. So, sorry if you don't like that I hate scotch. I don't care.
None of
We're
us
not
are real
making
big
the drinks
fans
for
of it.
you.
Right. So I chose the La Gritonia Reposado tequila. It is actually made by Meli Barajas. I hope I said that right. She owns a distillery down in Jalisco, Mexico, and she has an all-women crew that works for her at the distillery, which I thought was a really great way to also pay tribute to this book and subject. I also kind of really like, and I found this out recently, that actually like literally earlier, I was writing my notes. So they take all the remnants from the agave they use for the tequila, and they actually give it to local farmers to help feed their cattle. So she's also doing some really great community work on doing that, also besides like giving women jobs. And she also uses recycled Mexican bottles that are repurposed and hand blown to use for her actual tequila bottles. So she's doing some great stuff. It's a pretty good tequila. It has a little bit of a burn. I'm usually an Espolón Blanco girl, but I do enjoy this. So it's something that I would definitely pay the pretty penny it was. Again,
Yeah, I like the bottle. The bottle's really
it is
cool.
a very
And
nice bottle.
It's even cooler that it's recycled. You know? So that's awesome.
So she's also like doing, great things for the earth. So I think it's great. We should all, if you haven't tried it, try it. Like, it's worth the money, I think. So saying that, I'll give you the recipe for the Gilman's El Refresco, and then I'll give you the non-alcoholic version.
Please do.
And it's such a good, easy, non-alcoholic version.
Yes. Made it easy for yourself.
Yes. So the regular alcoholic version is 2 ounces of La Gritona Reposado tequila, a 1/4 ounce of Herradura agave syrup, a 1/4 ounce of the Master of Mixes mint simple syrup, or you can make your own mint. I said mental.
Mental syrup.
Some mental syrup, yes. Which I probably, had I had more time, I probably would have done myself, because the Master of Mixes one was a little strange tasting. It tasted a little bit like dirt and mint.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe make your own mint simple syrup if you can. I mean, it's super easy. So
We felt like we needed more mint.
yeah.
Like, it wasn't strong enough.
No. Let's see. A 1/2 ounce of lime juice, a whole kiwi, 3 large or 5 to 6 small mint leaves, and then Fever Tree Mediterranean tonic water. So what you do is you cut your kiwi in half. You can either scoop it out with a spoon or just smush it out of the fur.
Gross. The fur.
The skin, which is also kind of gross.
Yeah. Which one's worse? I don't know.
I don't know. All right. So put the pulp of the kiwi into the bottom of your shaker and then muddle it to where it's just smooshed up. And then you can put in your mint leaves and very, very gently just push down the muddler 3 to 4 times. You don't want to over smoosh it. If you over bruise the mint, it actually makes it a little bit bitter, which you don't want to do. We just want to release the oils in the mint. So then you can add all your liquids, add ice, shake it up real good, and then you'll want to strain it because you're going to get all the seeds from the kiwi. And then put it in your glass with crushed ice, top it off with the tonic water, and then just garnish with some mint leaves. And if you want a little bit fruitier, because it's a very clean, refreshing, herbaceous kind of flavor with a very pretty green color. If you want a little bit more fruity, like what we did for Amber, you can add 2 ounces of pineapple juice.
Amber and her freaking girly drinks.
Listen, I'm a fucking fruity little bitch. I don't know what to tell you.
So yeah, 2 ounces of pineapple juice, and it gives you a little bit more fruit for you.
Yeah, it was still good.
Yeah,
I really like the color. The green, it's
turned out
not
nice.
neon green. It's kind of like a pastel-y looking green. It's
like a honeydew melon green.
Yeah,
that's a good way to describe
you and your
it.
honeydews. Smell its butt. See if it's okay.
Honeydews, honeydones.
It kind of smells like cucumbers almost. Even though there's no cucumbers.
That was actually what I kind of said earlier. That's what I was kind of thinking earlier. It's like, it's almost like cucumbery, but it's not cucumbery at all. There's no cucumber in it.
It's a really good summer drink, I feel like, even though this episode is not coming out in the summer. But you know what? You keep it in your little, your
recipe book.
Your recipe book.
When is this one coming out?
February.
Wow.
Valentine's Day month.
Maybe if you're feeling like you need a hint of summer in the middle of the cold.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. When you're all depressed in February, chug a couple of these and you'll feel better.
Yeah. So for the
heater. Pretend you're on a beach.
Right. For the non-alcoholic, basically everything's the same except for the obvious tequila. You can use, I'm not sure if it's Lear's or Liar's, but they have an agave blanco spirit, which would work wonderfully for a stand-in for the Gratona. Because even though the Gratona is a reposado, it is very light in color and very similar in taste to a blanco tequila, more so than in a normal reposado.
I had a question. What is the difference in taste between the brown and the white?
So it's all aging. Blanco is very new. It's not aged. So that's why it's silver or white or whatever.
So is the taste less pungent?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So then you have reposados, which are aged around 6 months. She actually ages hers in, I think it was Jack Daniel's whiskey barrels.
Dang.
Or something. It was a whiskey barrel.
Make it tangy.
Yeah, so you get the smokiness and the flavor, a little bit of the flavor from the whiskey, and then the wood. Añejo tequila is aged about a year, and it can be aged to 3 years.
Oh, okay.
So that's basically the difference. And it's also done in either whiskey barrels or oak barrels. There's also mezcal, which is a tequila, but it's smoky.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely...
It's different.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get used to it, but whenever I did, I was like, okay, I get this, but it's definitely not my
your
cup of
go-to.
tea. Yeah.
Yeah. Tequila, when they take the heart of the agave plants and they distill it in steam. And then mezcal's what they do, and this is what gives it the smoky flavor. They take the heart of the agave, they actually bury it, and it's in smoldering ashes, and they bury it, and it's kind of cooked that way, and then they are able to extract the liquid and stuff from it that way. And the mezcal is actually a very traditional way of doing it.
All right. Thank you, Sam, for that enlightenment on tequila.
You're welcome.
Amber, do you want to dive into our author? I haven't even said who our author was, so why don't you introduce us to our author?
So our author is Mallory O'Meara. She's pretty freaking badass, I think. She seems like somebody I'd chill with. So she is an award-winning best-selling author and historian. And she is also Dark Dune's screenwriter and producer. She has 2 cats in LA, or near LA is where her home is. It's not in LA.
No one lives in LA.
Yeah, because that's
on.
Foolish. So her first book was this one, The Lady from the Black Lagoon. And it had a 2019 Skiba Award for biography, and a Rondo 2019 Book of the Year Award. She has a literary podcast called Reading Glasses, and it's about book culture and reader life, and it's hosted with Bree Grant, who is a filmmaker and writer. And she wrote another book, this was her second one, called Girly Drinks, A World History of Women and Alcohol. And that won a James Beard Award. So far, she has...
That's fucking awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
So far, she's got a podcast. She's written a couple of books. She's written one of those books about alcohol. Her podcast is about books, so we'd all hang with her, right?
Yeah, she sounds bad.
Yeah.
I think she's around our age too.
Yeah.
And she has like amazingly dyed hair.
Yeah,
and like
I'm looking at
tattoos
her,
everywhere.
Instagram right now
Yeah.
because I'm trying to find this fucking tattoo.
She looks cool as fuck, and I want to hang out with her.
Be our friend, Mallory, please.
Crossover podcast?
Yeah, that'd be
Um,
awesome. We
that
both
would
have
be
a literary podcast.
We do.
We both talk about drinks. Drinks.
She's written, I think, 5 books, and she's working on her 6th.
Busy body.
Yeah. The 3rd book is called Girls Make Movies, co-created with cartoonist Jen Vaughn, and it won a 2023 Junior Library Guild selection. So as a Dark Dunes screenwriter and producer, she has produced 3 films called Kids vs. Monsters, Yama Song, March of the Hollows, and a live book trailer. She is today doing the 70th anniversary of Creature from the Black Lagoon screening and discussion with her and Susan Arnold.
Yeah, so it's funny because Amber came over here earlier and we all kind of did things last minute
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Amber was writing the author stuff and I was kind of looking at her website too, and I like clicked on events and I'm like, wait, Amber, there's literally an event going on today in Los Angeles that is a screening of the Creature of the Black Lagoon.
That's insane.
So it's kind of funny, copacetic, man. Like, stars align that, like, we're recording this today, and she's also doing this event today.
Yep.
In LA. Honestly, it's probably kicking off in 15 minutes as we speak. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, she seems like someone we would all get along with, I think.
She's got a shirt in one of these pictures that says book slut, and I'm like, I want it.
Book slut. Alrighty, so as we stated before, this book is about a woman that is a badass. Her name is Milicent Patrick, and she basically, we'll really get into her life, but kind of she was uncredited for her work on Creature from the Black Lagoon, which back in the day, a lot of people were uncredited, but
There are some disgusting reasons why
yes,
she
she was a
not
very
credited.
talented woman in a lot of ways, and she basically got blacklisted from Hollywood because of fucking patriarchy.
Because of a little bitch boy.
Bitch ass bud. So I just want to kick things off with a quote that Mallory put at the very beginning of the book, kind of describing Milicent. In a low-cut, tight-fitting black crepe dress worn under a white lace coat with flashing necklace, earrings, and bracelets, Miss Patrick, who is of Italian-German descent, looked a lot more like a fashion illustration herself than a creator of bizarre monsters. Unmarried, she admits to no current romance. Quote, "Why should I bother with the Hollywood wolves?" she murmured. "I'm happy with my monsters."
That's because most of those men were just as bad as monsters anyway.
Yeah. So that kind of kicks things off with how the tone of this book is going to go.
I also would really like to mention, because I really liked this, her dedication in the front of the book was really badass too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. It says, "To all the monster girls, show them your teeth."
Show them your teeth.
Yes.
So one thing that, well, I think is interesting about this book is that, you know, it is definitely about Milicent, but Mallory also puts in some of her own stories, which not camera, but off mic, Sam kind of said she didn't really care for, but I kind of understand why she did that, because it's like, you know, she's relating, she's in the business and stuff, but I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I want to learn more about Milicent.
Give me all the Milicent. I need to know more.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to fill from an empty cup, though, and I think that well was pretty dry.
I think she got
yeah.
as much as she could. And
She really did, and she did a great job finding that fucking history.
Oh, yeah.
very
'cause
dedicated.
It was literally buried. Like she had to dig to get any history on her.
Yeah.
And also what was difficult was Milicent changes her names like
15
million
times. Yeah.
Milicent, Patrick, Rossi, Trent.
There's so many different ones.
And her real name is actually Mildred.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's a lot of, Mallory was fucking determined.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
we gotta give her kudos for that.
Yeah, most definitely, because it's a lot of work.
Yep. So yeah, Milicent was born Mildred Elizabeth Fulvia Rossi on November 11th, 1915. Her parents were Camille Charles Rossi and Elise Albertina Bill. She was the second out of 3 children, and her parents kind of moved around a lot because her dad was an architect, like a structural engineer.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of moved to where he got jobs at. And he was actually really, really good at his job, but he was also had a very big ego and I don't think could hold jobs for very long.
Yeah, he seemed kind of a shit.
He kind of seemed like a shit, which, interestingly enough, kind of coincides with something that Milicent has
Later interactions.
later in her life she has to deal with. So it's kind of interesting reading this book, seeing like the similarities between her dad and the person that basically ends up blacklisting her from fucking Hollywood. So yeah, they were in Mexico City for a while, and then I don't know how to say that. La Boquilla. Sorry, I also do not speak Spanish. And then they were in Texas for a while, and Peru, and then they moved back to San Francisco.
Her mother also, she suffered from probably depression and some maybe anxiety.
Mental health
ill.
issues. Yeah. Definitely she did.
Which kind of followed Milicent as well in her life.
Yeah. And, back in that day, people did not treat mental illness in the way they should. Yeah, they basically ignored it. So I'm sure that had a lot to do with things. And then also being married to Camille, that probably didn't help. Yeah.
Ignored.
And they also talk about how both of her parents were very conservative and would never let her wear any kind of clothes that would show her skin or any kind of makeup, and she could never hang out with boys, and they were just a very conservative family, and Camille was just very
his way,
not great,
or the highway.
Yeah.
Basically, even after she was like 16 and 18, they didn't want her to date. They wanted her wearing these big, oversized frumpy
dresses,
frocks.
which I'm like, you're in freaking Southern California or, Latin America, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
She's probably dying.
Yeah, I just envisioned her in like a black dress with the little white frills around the really tight neckline. I'm like, that seems very fucking uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So Camille ends up getting a job building a house for William Randolph Hearst, which, if you guys don't know who he is basically the guy who Citizen Kane is based off of. He was a very big newspaper mogul that basically battled with Pulitzer as like the biggest newspaper of all time. So he's like fucking loaded.
Yellow journalism.
Yeah. So we don't have time to get into all of that.
That's
but he's a
lot,
whole story on his own, which we could definitely dive into on a different book at some point.
Which, hate me if you want, but Citizen Kane is a boring ass movie.
Okay, so that is one of the movies that in film school like was shoved down my throat.
They make you watch it.
But I never actually watched the whole thing. I only saw clips, and then the class that I was supposed to watch it, our professor was like, how many of you have seen Citizen Kane? And everybody except me and like one other person raised our hand. So he's like, okay, we're not going to watch that. We're going to watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And I'm like, fuck it.
That's much better.
So I was like, okay, I've basically seen the movie, but just not in bits and pieces. And whatever.
I had a film major boyfriend at the time, and he made me watch it with him, and I was like, I fucking hate you.
And then you broke up with him.
Pretty much. I mean, he also made me watch Eraserhead, and I cannot fucking deal with that movie. It makes me irrationally angry. So
Hearst actually hired a woman called Julia Morgan to build his house, which is not a house. It's literally a fucking mansion.
Castle, yeah.
It's called like basically the Enchanted Hill or the Enchanted Castle or something like that.
Wasn't it like 1,000 acres or something wild?
Oh, I have that down here. Disneyland is 85 acres and Hearst Castle is 128 8 acres.
Oh, so no, not 1,000, but
That's a
120
lot.
acres is still a
I don't
lot.
know how much acres are, but that seems like quite a bit.
I mean, my grandparents have 100 acres, and it's a lot of property. I have never been on all of the property that they own.
My mom has 20, and it's a good, I mean, it takes a while to walk around it.
Yeah. So, Julia Morgan, this is one thing we're kind of talking about too, is that we like how Mallory kind of did a deep dive into different characters and specifically put a spotlight on different women that were prevalent around this time that maybe didn't get as much credit as they should have. And one of those is Julia Morgan, who was an architect that I think it said she would end up designing almost 800 buildings in California by the time she was done with her career.
Yeah, she was a badass.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really enjoyed reading about her. That is one of the things that I really enjoyed about this book was Mallory was like, look at this badass lady. But also, in this story, I'm going to tell you about, like, 5 other badass ladies. And I was like, fucking right.
Yeah.
Good job, Mallory.
I was
Promoting
also
women.
very surprised and that Hearst actually used a woman architect, but obviously her work showed how good she was, and even for the time, the fact that there was a woman architect, like, that's impressive in its own right.
Whole thing.
I think his father used her company or something, and that's why Hearst ended up... It was something about how Hearst had known about her because of something else, and then he was like, oh, I like her work, I'm going to hire her too.
Yeah. It's because her first employer liked to brag to his colleagues that he didn't have to pay Morgan as much because she was a woman. But that was the firm that was hired for several projects by Phoebe Hearst, which was William Randolph Hearst's mother. And she worked on those projects, and the Hearsts were so impressed with her work. Whenever she got her own office, they became clients of hers in 1904 when she opened her own office.
Which, I mean...
That's a fucking huge thing. 1904. That's huge.
Do you know how hard she had to fucking work to, one, get her own office, but to also get clients like the Hearsts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that bitch worked.
One of the things that I thought was, like, interesting and, like, infuriating, of course, was when she opened the Fairmont Hotel in, like, San Francisco, like, whenever they opened it up and she was the freaking designer of the building, everyone was commenting on how beautiful the new building was, and a reporter approached her and asked her about being the decorator of the place and assumed that was her contribution, and she was pissed and never gave the press another interview. She's like, fuck all of you. Like, I made this. Fuck you.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess technically you could look at her as the decorator in a sense because she fucking decorated the architecture of the building.
Yeah.
As the building, but like, no. Not the interior decorator. Like, that's bullshit.
Right.
Well, not that interior decorating's bad, but like she literally built the building.
Yeah.
Like, give her credit where credit is
Designed
due.
and had made sure it was built. Like,
yeah. It's just like one of those things that it's like, oh, you're the woman, so you probably put the paintings and shit on the walls. It's like, no.
You match
like,
the
fuck
drapes
you.
to the carpet.
Yeah, and not that there's anything wrong with, like, interior design or any of that. Like, it is a very beautiful profession, and, like, people do a great job of it.
And
but,
it's
like,
fun, but, like...
Yeah, but, like, if you're not the one, like... But if you're the one who built the fucking building, you don't want to be like... Yeah, I, like, picked out, like, the carpets and the drapes and shit.
It's like I painted.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's demeaning.
Yeah.
To do that. Yep. It's actually really sad because there's a point, too, where, like, we'll get into, but Camille, his fragile male ego, gets in the way, and he kind of butts heads with Julia a lot because...
He doesn't want to have to answer to her.
Exactly.
She's the boss.
Like, he intentionally goes out of his way to, like, be insubordinate to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, like, that thing with the pool, right?
Yeah, the cement and stuff.
Where he blatantly ignored her...
Don't pour this cement, and he goes and fucking pours...
Does it anyway.
Yeah, his crew...
And then she, like, fucking went in, tore it up, and was like, he's not allowed in here anymore.
Yeah. Yep. Sad thing is, she would have been a really good role model for Milicent, but all she heard about Julia was through her dad, so it was probably all bad stuff, because he probably came home and complained about her all the time. just because he was having to take orders from a woman. They ended up moving onto Hearst, like, in the vicinity. They weren't, like, at Hearst Castle, but all the workers who were working on the building of the castle, basically, were living on premise because they were working on it, like, fucking 24/7. So,
And it was huge.
Milicent basically grew up at Hearst Castle for 10 years, which is definitely a unique experience, I'm sure. Mallory, she does describe things in a real, like, she would be a good, like, someone to just listen to for stories, because she describes things in really funny ways sometimes.
Yeah.
She'd probably be really great to be listening and speak about this.
Yeah, exactly.
movie,
Like tonight when she's speaking about the creature from the Black Lagoon. But she quoted, she described Hearst as, Hearst was the extremely wealthy version of the aunt that wants her leopard print armchair to match all her precious moment figurines. So it was just like the most minute details of things that he wanted done that were just so obscenely just like, what the fuck? But you had to do it because he had the money and he wanted you to do it. So you did it.
I like this little footnote too. It's remember, this is an 1860s millionaire talking about George Hearst. This is I can pee in a golden chamber pot money.
Yeah. One of the outlandish requests that he had was that...
Oh, God, the tree?
Yeah, Cecil B. DeMille, which if you don't know who he is, he was a big-ass film director, and he was walking through Hearst Castle with, you know, Hearst or whatever, and he scratched his head on a tree branch because he walked under a tree. So what happened? Hearst made them move the fucking tree.
He was just like, I want the tree to be moved. Actually, I just want it turned around.
Yeah. Like, why couldn't you just cut the branch?
I know, that was my thought. And he's like,
Poor
no,
fucking tree.
I want a north-facing tree instead of a south-facing tree. Like, what the fuck?
The tree faces all goddamn directions.
Yeah.
And also the trauma of derooting a tree and then replanting it, I'm sure is not great.
No live oak had ever been successfully moved and replanted, which I don't think is true, but okay. But Camille agreed to try. Now, I would assume that no 400-year-old oak had ever been tried to be moved and replanted.
That's a big-ass tree.
That's a big-ass tree. I don't know why they didn't just fucking trim the branch. Because they had money. They had so much money, they were wiping their asses with it, I guess. I don't fucking know.
It's
That's
just one of
crazy.
many examples of how ridiculously rich people can be ridiculous.
Mhm.
So, I did find a quote about kind of like Camille's relationship with Morgan and how much of a twat he was. So there were, like we said, there were a lot of challenges because of all the crazy requests that Hearst had. Camille was frustrated by these challenges, but he wasn't frustrated with Hearst. He was frustrated with Morgan. More specifically, he chafed at having to answer to her. With Hearst, he was always agreeable, even though Hearst was the one asking for these over-the-top designs. With Morgan, he was obstinate. Instead of Camille confronting her directly about the engineering issues he saw in the plans and offering his solutions to her, he would often go over her head by writing directly to Hearst to tell him instead. It did the double duty of disrespecting Morgan while showing off his ingenuity to Hearst.
So, something bad happened to Milicent, though, while they were living there at Hearst. Do you guys remember that?
Appendicitis?
Yeah.
Yep, she got appendicitis. And she was misdiagnosed by the doctor in San Simeon with the intestinal flu, and so her appendix ruptured. And so she was transported to a hospital, and she was treated for peritonitis for the next 3 months. She really wasn't expected to survive that. Like, that was
That's like
much...
almost like septic shock almost.
Peritonitis, yeah, it's basically fluid from your intestines and bodily, like, it's... You get stuff where it doesn't belong, and your stomach like gets really, really tight, board-like abdomen.
Yeah, your whole abdomen is inflamed, basically.
Yep, and yeah, you usually get septic and die. That's usually how that happens, and it happens really fast. It's very dangerous. So it had lifelong effects, and she had thinning hair. Even though I did not notice that in pictures, it said that she had thin hair, but I don't. The other lifelong effect is that she was infertile.
Mm-hmm. Which comes into play
later.
Yep. Also, Milicent really adored Hearst's wife, who was also named Milicent.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why she ends up changing her name to Milicent, because she really looked up to Hearst's wife, Milicent. And then we also get into Hearst being a typical fucking male and having an affair with a lady called Maurice Davis.
And she was much younger than him, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember all the details of that, but it was basically something that his wife knew about and just let happen kind of thing. But
they never got divorced. They just separated and like kind of lived their own lives afterwards. But, you know, divorce was a very like faux pas thing for women at the time. And if she would still be getting financial benefits since he had so much money. Like, I honestly understand why she didn't just outright divorce him, because usually women didn't get shit if they got divorced.
Back in that day. Yeah.
Well, after his mom died, didn't he move her into that house or something?
Yeah. They end up living.
They all just like.
I mean, it was a big enough house.
Did they all just live fucking happily ever after? Unhappily?
No,
ever
Milicent
after?
actually, it says in here that she moved into her own home in New York City.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give me that money. I'm moving to New York.
Fuck you. I'm going. You guys can just live your little weird thing.
Yeah. But the reason why Maurice Davis is even, I feel like, relevant to this story is she's the one that had the affinity for wild animals, and how Hearst Castle kind of became a mini zoo because they bought a whole bunch of animals, and there's a whole bunch of wild stories about, you know, these wild animals interacting with the workers. Specifically, Camille had a favorite leopard called Lepsy, which... Can you be more creative than that? That's a horrible name for a leopard. That he would feed by hand. And then it ended up attacking a different worker and like ripping off that worker's arm.
That was the lions. He was feeding the lions by hand. Lepsy was the one that Camille took Milicent's little sister Ruth to see all the animals. And then he surprised her by having Lepsy jump on her from a tree just to see what she would do. I'm like, she could have ripped your fucking 4-year-old's face off, stupid. So I guess it was a 10. She was 10 at that time. But like, what the fuck?
Oh, so much better.
Yeah, so much better.
A 10-year-old could fight off a leopard cub.
Yeah.
In another footnote too, it says that Julia Morgan, going back to her, she actually was the one that designed Hearst and Davies' house that they moved into later in life in Beverly Hills.
Oh.
So he used her once again for architecture.
Well, she does good work.
Yeah.
She'd had the hookup, man. She probably didn't need any more clients.
Right.
But I mean, like I said, she had almost made over about 800 buildings by the time she retired. So
that's a lot.
That's a
and
shit
Hearst
ton.
Castle took forever to fucking
build. Yeah. So Mallory ends up visiting Hearst Castle because, like we said, it kind of goes back and forth. We'll probably focus more on Milicent's story, but we will dive into some of Mallory's stories. But she does end up visiting Hearst Castle on a tour. And there's no mention of Camille at all on the tour. And she ends up talking to a librarian who gives her a copy of an audio recording of an interview with Milicent where she is talking about her father, because basically, like we said, Camille's very hard and stubborn and very hard to work with, and he ends up getting fired from Hearst Castle, so no wonder there's no mention of him because he left on bad terms. And Milicent kind of made it, even though like she ended up being estranged from her family later on,
she still idolized him.
She's still, you know, family, and she wanted his name to be a part of it. It's kind of interesting because his name got, you know, taken down from the history of the Hearst Castle, kind of like her name got taken down from Hollywood, but his was for his bad actions, not her for patriarchy reasons. But it's kind of interesting that she was trying to fight to get his name back into history whenever that basically happened to her too, you know?
Yeah.
And like they even mentioned on the tour about the moving of the tree, but they didn't actually mention Camille at all.
Even though that was one of his proud like
moments,
stories that he liked talking about. Yeah. Yeah. After she visits Hearst Castle, Mallory kind of is diving into like how she struggled with trying to tell Camille's story because of how much of a dick he was. And she says, Milicent was right. Her father did deserve remembrance for a decade's worth of hard work and creative problem solving at one of the most famous and beautiful estates in the country. If he is going into the history books, all of him needs to go into it. Not just the talent, but also the darkness. I'm glad that, like, she said that, because that's, I mean, nobody's perfect, but, like, there are dark sides to people. And yeah, he was really good at what he did, but also he was a fucking asshole.
Yep.
So it's like that, I feel like that overshadowed his talent, just because it's like, there are so many people that are also talented and not assholes, you know?
Yep.
Like, you don't have to be a fucking asshole to get anywhere in life. And, you know, he ends up getting fired, like I said, but gets a job with the state of California because Julia Morgan recommends him and helps him get that job. Which also, I'm like, she didn't have to fucking do that.
She stuck her neck out for an asshole after he, like, was just completely a dick to him. Or he was completely a dick to her.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I mean, he still deserves a job.
Yeah.
So that just goes back to, like, if it was the other way, he would have never stuck his neck out for her. But she's a good person.
Yeah.
A talented person and a good person.
And
so
I think she
did.
cared about the kids, too. Because,
Yeah.
like...
That's what I was going to say. Maybe because he had a family. And he was talented. He was just a dick.
Yep. Because the whole time that Milicent was in the hospital and being treated, I guess, Morgan went and visited her and brought her toys and stuff. She cared about her.
Yeah.
So.
And like I said, if it wasn't for her dad, she would have had a really good relationship with her, I think, and she would have been one of her role models.
Yeah.
But Camille let his little fragile male ego get in the way.
There's a lot of fragile male egos in this book.
Yes, and we will crumble and stomp them all.
She went to Glendale Junior College initially. And, like, I guess... Oh, she was focused not on getting a degree, but on moving forward in a specific direction. Art was her calling, and she wanted to continue on to art school. And so she applied for those 3 scholarships to Chouinard Art Institute. And she ended up getting to go. Yep.
And then we kind of get a little deep dive into Madame Nelbert, which also, I've never heard a female called Nelbert. That's adorable. I like that name. Nelbert Chouinard.
That was her nickname.
That was her nickname. Yeah.
Nellie Murphy was her original name. And she always hated her name, but when in college, her brother wrote to her from dentistry school in Chicago to warn her that there was a dancer named Nellie Murphy who was gaining a sordid reputation for her saucy exploits.
Oh.
So a friend renamed her Nelbert as a joke.
Oh, that's
She
cool.
liked it, and she thought it was funny.
Aw.
Yeah.
I like that. I was like, that's such a
I
unique
couldn't
name.
remember why. I was like, I know there's, like, a reason, and I can't remember the... Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how she got her nickname or her name.
Yeah.
Burlesque dancer. Woo!
And then Mallory kind of goes into, like, the history of Nelbert. She says, there are few women with as great an influence on Southern California's reputation as a hub of 20th century American art than Nelbert Chouinard. She was, as they say, one bad motherfucker. Only a year after women were allowed to vote, she opened her own art school in Southern California and soon transformed it into an institute with an international reputation for producing quality artists. So, yeah, it was a well-renowned school. And we kind of get into the connection that Walt Disney has with that school, because he was really adamant about having all of his animators skilled and having the best kind of, tools in their toolkit.
And really learning the way to draw movement.
Yes. Yeah. It like, there was like a term, drawing for action. Mm-hmm. That's what they called it. So he ended up approaching Nelbert and being like, look, I don't have any money to pay you for these students, but can you, give them some education? And she basically was like, yep, I can do that for free because it's for a good, it's for the arts. So she basically...
And these were already, established animators, but he just wanted them to basically do what he wanted them to do, just better their skills.
Yep. And she's like, we'll work at a price later. Yeah. She also was, she was interested in becoming a doctor, I guess.
Oh, really?
Originally, yeah. So she, sorry.
Who, Nelbert?
Nelbert, yeah. So she had wanted to follow in her father's footsteps and be a doctor, but he didn't approve and proclaimed, "There will be no woman doctor in this family." And she acquiesced and gave up in her medical ambitions. And so she pursued her dream of becoming an artist instead. So
You don't want me to be a doctor? Fine, I'll start my own art school.
yeah.
All right.
Oh, Dad!
Fuck you!
I'll really say fuck you and
Yeah.
be an artist.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I just thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. So Milicent ends up working for Disney in 1939 in the ink and paint department, which I thought it was really interesting how Mallory talks about how that department was staffed fully by women because they were the only ones that had the attention to detail to, you know, get everything right. Disney did not trust the men to not fuck things up. And it actually reminded me a lot of Radium Girls, which I know is on our list of books to cover, maybe. But same thing.
Huge.
That list is very long.
It's very
That
long.
book is big too.
I know.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, maybe not, because it's very long and it's kind of well known. But anyway, that whole thing was, you know, a lot of women in like factory art work were hired because of their attention to detail on things. There's even a part where they talk about tea time where the women weren't allowed to have coffee because they didn't want to have them get jitters and like not be able to have a steady hand, which I think is really funny.
I'm wondering too if maybe partly why they wanted women because they had small hands
Mm-hmm.
and it would be less likely to smudge
Yeah.
Could be.
their paints and stuff.
I'm not the person for that kind of a job. I'm not steady.
Yeah.
And I smudge everything.
Disney definitely has his issues, but one thing that he did do well was for the time, he did hire a lot of females, which a lot of people were not doing at the time. And also he was adamant about the men that worked there to not be dicks to the
Disgusting.
women. There was
Yeah.
like signs that he would put up being like, "Don't be disrespectful, don't do this, don't do that," you know. So yeah, he's not a perfect...
Control thyself.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he was problematic in a lot
of ways
Yeah.
that we don't have time to get into,
Yeah.
but at least he was progressive in that way.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Disney.
You weirdo.
Another quote that I liked that Mallory said was, "Disney, the biggest name in animation and one of the biggest names in film. They own Star Wars, your childhood emotions, and by the time this book is published, probably several planets." I was like, she's not wrong.
Right.
In 1949, Milicent gets transferred to the animation and effects department, which is pretty cool. And this is where she ends up working on Fantasia, which, growing up, you know, I watched a lot of Disney movies, but I remember being gifted this VHS when I was like 5 years old and watching it and being like, this is fucking amazing. Not the parts where the composer's talking, but the rest of it is amazing. It definitely was a box office flop when it came out. But I think it's, you know, and it's still probably definitely not the most popular Disney movie ever, but I really think the animation in it is like definitely pretty fucking
Progressive.
for the time.
It's definitely very good.
Very good. They were
Even today, it's pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know.
I was still impressed by the ghosts.
Yeah.
The ghosts were cool as fuck. Some of that looked very real.
Well, so let's go back. So we ended up screening. So Milicent ended up working on the last sequence of Fantasia, which is called Night on Bald Mountain. And if you haven't seen it before, it's basically this demon guy that is very winged, and he looks like a big gargoyle, and he
looks like one of the main gargoyles from the cartoon Gargoyles in the 90s.
Which is also Disney.
Yep.
They like the
Was
gargoyles.
it?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
I did not know.
So anyway, it's all about this demon that comes out at night, and it's very kind of terrifying, honestly. I remember being like, when I was little being like, this is scary, but I love it. But anyway, Milicent ended up working on that. So I had, today, before we started recording, I was like, Amber, Sam, we got to watch this. So we sat down and watched it. What did you guys think?
So I didn't see Fantasia until I was like maybe a teenager. So I didn't like grow up with it. And I remember though watching it and being like, this is metal as fuck.
Yes.
I was like, what is happening
A
here?
lot of nipples for Disney, too.
Yeah.
I was
Surprising.
shocked at the nips.
There's a lot of nipples.
Some harpy tits popping in the
Yeah.
screen right in your face.
Yep.
But it's glorious. Not necessarily the tits, but
I mean, sure, that too.
They were
Fine.
glorious.
they were very
Glorious
nicely
tits.
drawn. But
Whatever.
the ghosts scene is just amazing, and I'm still like, how the hell did they draw that and draw it so well that when they basically did their little flippies, their little flip book things,
Mm-hmm.
that it just looked like it was there but not there at the same time. Because parts of the ghosts, it didn't seem like they were there all the time, but it was just like, that took a lot of work.
Uh-huh.
It was
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
So I watched Fantasia as a very small child with my grandma, and I, as an adult watching it, gotta say, Grandma, what the fuck? But
This is cultured. Here, watch it with a lot of
Yeah. I was
It's about
like,
classical music.
yeah, they're like, look, Chernabog, and like this friggin' demon summoning like all these ghosts and demons and shit out of like the
Which
woodwork.
makes me want to look into Chernabog. not
Yeah,
gonna
I
lie.
know. I wanted to kind of look at it. We didn't have time, but I wanted
Yeah,
to
I
look into
didn't
it.
get around to it
And that
either.
was super cool. And then yeah, like I was just like, wow, surprise tits, interesting. So
Yeah.
I was a little shocked, but I was like, wow, Disney, I can't believe you got away with that.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
it was what, 1940?
40? Yeah, I think when it came out. And yeah, it was a box office flop when it came out. And Disney put a shit ton of money into it. He really, it was definitely his like little baby that he wanted to do. But
Because it was supposed to only be a few like little cartoon skits.
And it
was
turned
what
into, like-
originally was.
it's like over 2 hours.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
think
then
it's 2.5 hours or something.
It's
it
a
was
lot.
something like by the time they had made like a few of them, he was like, we're just going to make this a big ass movie instead because we've spent so much money that we have to make it a movie instead.
Yeah.
He's like, this would never make it as cartoons.
So going back to some of the reasons why we were kind of blown away by the animation, there were two things that I wanted to point out. One was that they used this thing called pastel effect while they were animating all the sequences from Fantasia, which you can't use pastel like things
Real
when you're
oil
animating
pastels,
because
yeah.
it will smudge.
Smudge.
So the way they did this effect where it looked like it was pastel, but it wasn't, to make it kind of look dreamy. Because there's other sequences, like there's a mythological sequence and other things where it's like, oh, like that's why the sky and everything looks so like kind of realistic and everything, is because
It
of the
was
pastel
so
effect.
pretty in the way it moved, almost like Northern Lights, but it was like just very dreamy.
Yeah.
And then going back to what you're saying about like the ghost kind of like disappearing and everything, it's because, okay, there's a quote or there's a term.
It's like on her A game with film shit
I
right now.
am nerding out right now. So
I can tell and I'm digging it.
there's this term called the in-between animators. Because not everyone animates like you animate this whole thing. Someone does a character specifically, someone does the environment specifically, whatever. That's like, you know, when you're watching like Hanna-Barbera cartoons and Yogi Bear's like walking down the street and one of his arms is slightly different color than the rest of it, is because they animated his body and then they animated that one arm to move so that they didn't have to animate his whole body to move. So they kind of do that in Fantasia, where it's like they have these in-between artists where it's like, okay, you're doing the foreground, you're doing the little grass on this scene, but then the people in the background are doing the sky, but then the middle people are doing the ghosts that are flying up in between. So it's kind of like layering it on top of each other.
Yeah, like a little
Interesting.
flip booky
Yeah,
thing. Kind of like,
yeah,
that's what it makes me think of, as like a flip book.
yeah, exactly.
It's very cool looking.
Yeah, animation is so cool.
It is
I
very
fucking
cool.
love it.
Also, I don't think I showed you, but when I was creeping on Mallory's Instagram, she has a big old Chernabog tattoo on the back of her neck. And it, like, the wings span, like, the tops of her shoulders.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I'm telling you, we should be friends.
No.
Please be our
Come
friend.
on, Mallory. Let's
Mallory,
be
give us a call.
friends.
Yeah.
We'll all have us a girly drink and talk about books.
We all love the same things. So then, one thing also I wanted to point out is she talks about the Reluctant Dragon, which I don't know if you guys ever saw that.
I've never heard of it even.
Okay, that is another movie that I grew up with. I had all the obscure Disney shit, I guess.
Apparently a little weirdo.
I know! But anyway, so...
No wonder you like this.
Yeah, here's how Lauren got into the film industry.
Yeah, it's all because of Disney. So it's kind of like a combination between animation and then live action. And the live action is the behind the scenes of going through the Disney studio and like seeing how things are made. The animation is like a story about a dragon that eats turnips. It's really cute. He doesn't want to fight with anyone, and he has to, that's why he's reluctant. Like, they make him fight with it's based in medieval times, and he's supposed to fight with someone, but he doesn't want to because he's not a fighter. He's a reluctant dragon.
I'm actually pretty sure that I've probably seen that
He's
with you
blue.
now that you talked about it.
He's
I'm
blue
like, okay.
and he's got little ears.
I'm pretty sure I've seen this
And he
with
eats
you.
turnips.
I'm just thinking he's eating turnips. Maybe that's what gives him the fire breath because they're spicy.
Yeah, I know. And that's honestly why I wanted to eat turnips when I was little. But then I was like, ew, they're kind of weird.
They're a little weird.
But in the live action version of this movie, you can actually see Milicent in the background in one of the clips. It's obviously staged, but she's actually in it, which is kind of cool, which I want to rewatch and find her. Because I haven't seen it in forever, but
Probably like holding the paintbrush the right way though.
yeah, we'll get to that. And then she also worked on Bambi and Dumbo.
This is the time period where Milicent starts wearing like clothes that she actually likes. And
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
very fashionable.
Yeah, she's like dressed to the nines all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, I paint pictures and I'm in heels 24/7. And I'm like, good God, girl. I can't even wear heels to like get my mail. Good for you.
She was not allowed to dress like that when she was younger. So it's like, of course, yeah, if that's what she wants to do, that's what she wants to do.
Yeah.
She's a gorgeous woman. She would be gorgeous without that. But, you know, she's like, now is my time to like
Yeah.
shine, you know?
So one of my big gripes about this book
Mm-hmm.
is that Mallory was talking about how she was disappointed and almost angry with Milicent for going into work being dressed very feminine and just being very feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of finally understands the whole mental, I guess, process of Milicent eventually, like, as in why she was dressing like this, because Milicent just enjoyed dressing like it. Because one, she was like not allowed to for the longest time,
Mm-hmm.
but she just enjoyed being pretty and wearing things for her. But my problem was like she was basically just damning her for dressing like this, and I'm like, but like, how can you really complain about that? That was a standard type of outfit for the time for her. It was not really okay for women to wear pants
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. Or like even flat shoes wasn't common.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't really be mad at someone for wearing what is acceptable. Because if she hadn't, she probably wouldn't be having this type of job.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have the opportunities because she would be considered weird or like unusual, and maybe she needs to go to the psych ward now. Hysterical.
think though, so I liked that she put all of that in there and talked about it, because I think that her point of putting that in was to discuss how she had this unrealistic thought of
Mm-hmm.
how dare she dress that way. You know, that's why she couldn't be, you know, whatever. She's too feminine, and she shouldn't have been so feminine because she was in the man's world, blah, blah, blah. And then she was basically talking about how expecting her to dress any differently to have respect was like her trying to cover up her tattoos to have respect. It didn't matter what was done, because it shouldn't have mattered how she was dressed. It shouldn't matter if Mallory has her tattoos out or not. These are people who should be respected regardless of the way they look. But I like that she added that aspect of how angry she was about it in, because I think a lot of people have those thoughts sometimes. Like this unrealistic expectation of you should fit into this box or you should behave a certain way to get respect or whatever. And it's really not the case. Your work should speak for itself. The things that you do and say should speak for themselves. The way that we dress, the way that we, look shouldn't have anything to do with it. And she got there.
Oh, yeah.
But I think she needed to acknowledge that she had that negative relationship for a minute. And I think a lot of women have that negative relationship with themselves, with society as a whole. Because we're kind of taught to think that way. Like, we shouldn't dress this way because it's not respectful enough. It's not respectable enough. People won't, take me seriously as whatever. And it's really not the case, though. I mean, it is, but it isn't.
So there's a lot of similarities when I was reading this that I had with Mallory. And one of them was, I think one reason why she brought that up is because she was talking about how she was raised a tomboy. She was always a tomboy. She never dressed like that. And like for me, I remember growing up and making fun of people that were girly, making fun of people that liked pink, like all these things where now I'm like, that was a fucking dick thing to do. Like, I shouldn't make fun of my cousin for being girly. Like, there's nothing wrong with that just because I'm not like that.
Right.
And I think that's why she put it in there, is because also she's admired this person for her entire life. And she thinks of her in this specific way. So as she's going through and uncovering all these things about her, she's like, oh, I'm bummed that she, like, that's not how I would dress. Oh, I'm kind of bummed that she's dressing like this and all glamorous. And then being like, wait, but that's okay. That's her. Mm-hmm. That's not what I do. Yeah. It's okay if she, like, same. I would not, I mean, I will dress up when I need to, but I would not make myself up every fucking day and wear high heels every day. But that's what Milicent wanted to do. And that's totally fine. And I think that's kind of what she was going through. Like, she's growing as she's researching Milicent. And I think it's good that she put it in there because, like she says at the beginning of the book, this is not only Milicent's story, it's her story too, because she's navigating through Hollywood. Granted, decades later, but it's kind of the same thing. But I get why you're kind of frustrated at first.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, it doesn't seem until much later in the book to me that she really comes to that realization. So, like, it bothered me because I was like, there are so many factors here that she really... It really was out of her control, and you like really also don't know what's going through her head as a woman at this one time period, but also like she didn't get to experience the joy of doing that when she was growing up. And like for me as a person who has done burlesque, and I obviously am not a very... I'm kind of frumpy and tomboy, and
you're not frumpy.
I like am very like chill on how I dressed typically. But like going from that to being very like glammed up, like for a long period of time where it was like every month I was doing a show. I kind of missed that because like it made me feel really good and be like, God dang, I'm pretty, like, or whatever. But like, and now not doing that, I'm like, I don't really have the same reaction to myself. So I totally can see both point of views, but it annoyed me that she was just like kind of hateful towards Milicent and the way that she was portraying herself. That's her fucking choice to portray herself that way.
So another thing to consider too with this book is that when Mallory wrote this, so when it came out, she was about 27, 28.
Yeah.
Which means she'd probably been writing it for a while, right? I mean, she's young. She's developing opinions and thoughts. And, when I was 25, I had a lot of really stupid thoughts and opinions compared to what I do now.
Yeah.
She's 33. So, yeah, she's of an age with us.
I was about to say, she's almost, like, we're younger, or we're older than her.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm really older.
I was like, how old? I forgot how old I was. 26.
Yep, same. So, yeah, I mean, she's developing thoughts and opinions and probably was learning as she wrote it too. Like, I think she had a lot of growth from this experience, and I think you can kind of see it in the book.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Disney ends up having the art... Well, I don't know who strikes, but having a strike because the
It's
worker
an animator strike.
Yeah, it was an animator strike because they wanted to be unionized. And Milicent actually ended up staying on through that, but then with the war and everything, she ended up leaving Disney at a certain point. She also had a lot of migraines, which I'm sure did not help with having to work at a very attention to detail job. But before she left Disney, she met a man named Paul Fitzpatrick, who ends up being her first husband. But the thing about Paul, though, is he was married.
Oh, that was a really... Yeah.
And Milicent knew about that. His wife gets pregnant and actually approaches like Camille, like Milicent's family, being like, "Hey,
I think
she's taking my husband."
Camille, or was it? I thought
no,
it was Camille.
Yeah,
okay.
She approaches her family, Milicent's family, and tries to kind of be like, "Can you talk some sense into her?" And Milicent, having her first love, is like, "No, I'm going to stay with him." And unfortunately, his wife ends up committing suicide while she's pregnant, which is really sad. And Milicent ends up marrying Paul. And because of all of that, Milicent's family it's an estranged thing. They don't want to talk to her anymore because they're judging her about all of this stuff. And I'm sure calling her a lot of names that aren't great, So yeah, she basically does not have a relationship with her immediate family from here on out.
Yep.
So Milicent starts modeling, and back in this day, there weren't really, in magazines and advertisements, it was all still illustrated, so there weren't really human models for those kind of things. So she was mainly doing trade shows and conventions, like things where she was actually interacting with people at events and stuff like that. She also started getting into fashion design and book illustrations, which, do you guys remember Mallory talking about the book Pink and Blue Laughter?
Yes.
Let's talk about that, because that seems like something I want to get my little grubby hands on and look at, because it's an interesting looking book.
I too. I was like,
Yeah.
At first glance, it appears to be some sort of lighthearted joke book. Once you crack the spine, however, you see that this first page contains a poem about boobs and is accompanied by a drawing of a well-endowed woman in a very small sweater. It's a stretch to call it a dirty book. Nothing goes beyond the suggestive. It's mostly full of off-color jokes about horny widows, nagging wives, and cheap businessmen. It doesn't quite reach the point of lewd, but it's rather risque for 1944.
Sounds like a hilarious book I want to read, honestly. It probably has not some good things in it too, but
yeah,
it seems like an entertaining, kind of like the Esquire book, like.
In one of her footnotes, she said that she found a printing of it for less than $5 on eBay.
Oh, nice. Let's snag that shit. Mm-hmm. Mallory does get into, this is very relevant for because this was published in 2019. She talks a lot about the Me Too movement and all that stuff. And I do think we should talk about the story that Mallory tells about, okay, so she's, as Amber said, she's a producer with Dark Dune Studios. And she was working on a film where they needed some voice actors. And this particular voice actor, which she did not name names because I get it, you don't want to get sued. I really want to know who this fucker was, though.
Me too.
She tells this story that I think is relevant. So she was like really nervous too, because I think this was one of her first big roles, and it was some actor that she knew and was like looking forward to meeting. Mm-hmm. So she's all nervous. When the actor showed up with his female assistant, everyone introduced themselves. My boss, the director, the sound engineer. Each person shook the man's hand. I stepped up and extended my slightly clammy palm. Hi, I'm Mallory O'Meara, one of the producers of the project. He looked at me and gestured at my hair. Heh, is it green everywhere? The whole world paused for a horrible second. I mumbled some sort of non-committal response, not quite believing that this person would say something so blatantly lascivious and disrespectful to me, right in front of my crew. I helped cast you, you asshole. Well, if you need help with that, let me know, he chuckled and walked into the sound booth. Sultan, her boss, turned to me, stunned. I slowly sank back into my chair. And it goes on, but it just is like one of several instances where this kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like Sultan's response to that. He was like, we're never going to work with him again.
Yep.
We're
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. Yeah. Her relationship with her professional career relationship with her mentor, Sultan, I think is really good. Like, he seems like a really good, grounded person. And like, not every #not all men, for sure. But like, it's very sad how many people have stories like this.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I did appreciate, though, so like, she's definitely a feminist writer, and I dig that, but I loved the fact that she's not like, fuck men. She's like, fuck shitty men.
Yeah.
She definitely put some like fucking power behind the ones that she loves. Like, Sultan is one of them, the guy who did her tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
She spoke very highly of him. There were several men in the field that she spoke very highly of, and I appreciated that when I was reading this, because there's a lot of feminist writers. There's a lot of people in the feminist movement who are just like, fuck all men. And it's like, no. That's not really feminism.
Yeah.
Like, fuck the shitty men.
Yeah.
But like, we should be supporting the men who are supportive of us. We should be working together as a team and not like fucking shitting on men, because it kind of goes the other direction. That's like the other extreme of it. So like, no, not that either.
Yeah, and I think we all are in agreement on that.
Yeah.
Like, we definitely joke about things and like whatever, but
yeah,
you know, it's also like, I get why some people come from that, because they've been fucking pushed down and abused so much, but also it's like, you know, there's bad people in every group.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Every
And
single
there's
one.
good people in every group. But unfortunately, there are a lot of men that have gotten away with shit for far too long and have the biggest ego is because of their frail masculinity. That is just it's sad because, you know.
I think too that their egos are so big because they've gotten away with some of the shit that they have for so long, and nobody's fucking called them out. Because whenever they were being called out, people lost their jobs. People were fucking omitted. People, you know, it's really fucked up.
And it's not even like voice actors or people. It's everyday men that don't have any kind of like
power,
quote unquote, that do shit like this,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So yeah, we are definitely not on the side of fuck all men, but also like fuck the men that are fucking shitty.
Yep.
Yeah.
And fuck the women that are fucking shitty, and anybody who's fucking shitty. Like, don't talk about someone's pubic hair. Like,
yeah, that's really fucking weird.
Milicent ends up, she's divorced, and she does this modeling thing, and she ends up meeting William Hawke, Howard Hawke's brother, at a bus stop. And he just sees her and he's like, you'd be good. Let me put you into pictures. You know, like
pictures.
You're just so pretty.
You're so pretty. Let's put you into some pictures. So she starts doing background or extra acting. And it's really cool because, like, in her downtime on these sets, she starts creating portraits of movie stars, which, seriously, the amount of talent that this woman has.
Yeah.
She does so many things and is so artistic in so many ways. I'm just like, dang, girl.
It just drips from her.
I know. It oozes out
Yeah.
of her. Yes. So Milicent ends up meeting Frank Graham, who is a voice actor. And he was most well known for being the wolf in, like, those cartoons.
Oh, yeah.
Where they're like, they're
doing the wolf whistle.
the horny
Yeah.
wolf thing with their eyes turning into
Popping
hearts and
out,
popping out.
yeah.
Yeah. But they end up breaking up, and he ends up committing suicide in a very... I think he was in his car.
Yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't he didn't he just do the hose to the...
I think so.
Carbon
Carbon monoxide. And he left a note that...
This was so fucked.
That was very fucked.
It
I
was
wanted to talk about this. He
very
basically
fucking
blamed
weird.
her for why he committed suicide,
Yeah.
which is like, I'm sad that you had to take your life, but it's not her fucking fault.
And they were like living together and doing all the, like, they were together for a while, and he just made sure that she didn't get anything. It's like, what the fuck happened?
He seemed very fucking problematic.
And vindictive.
And like, yeah, again, the fact that he blamed her for it, I'm sure that fucked her up.
I think
I'm
it
sure.
definitely did.
Yeah. They seemed like they had a
Especially-
very whirlwind romance,
It
too.
was tumultuous, it seemed like.
Yeah.
So, not quite as tumultuous as later, but this was a really weird one.
So her extra work ends up getting her connected to Universal Studios, where she ends up meeting Bud Westmore. So let's talk about the Westmore family and their legacy. Basically, George Westmore is this makeup tycoon that started his whole business in the Los Angeles area. And I forget, maybe you guys remember, he ended up having a shit ton of kids.
19 children.
I was about to say 19 children. I knew it was a
Good
shit ton.
but only
Lord.
7 children survived to adulthood. 6 sons, 1 daughter.
That is not a good
God.
rate. But yeah, so all the sons that did survive ended up going into the makeup business, which I put in my notes, nepotism much?
Yeah.
So they start the House of Westmore Beauty Salon. And so they basically do beauty makeup.
Which is so
Can
funny to
we-
me.
Yeah.
Can we talk really quick about how Shirley Temple got her curls?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's do that. Let's do that.
That
little
made
deep
me
dive.
laugh.
Mini dive.
So, George, he was going to a place called Big Susie's French Whorehouse.
That's the name of an album right there.
Yeah. A honka tonk out.
And so-
Yep.
He, I guess he was practicing makeup and, curls and stuff. But one of the things was he liked the curls at the whorehouse.
Yeah.
And that's where he got, that trademark look.
He was actually getting their hair.
Oh yeah, he was taking
Yeah.
their hair because they
The
would just
women
give it to him
supplying
for
the
cheap
hair to
or
George
something.
never knew he was charging Mary $50 a curl, the equivalent about $650 today.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, he was able to, do makeup there, though. That's where he practiced a lot of his makeup, was at the whorehouse.
Mhm.
So I thought that was interesting.
But also, Shirley Temple wasn't the first one to have those curls. There was a
Mary
Pickford.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I know who Mary Pickford. I don't know her personally, but I know who Mary Pickford is. But I forgot that she was the one that actually rocked those curls before Shirley Temple did.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Shirley's obviously more known for it. But that is funny, the connection between Shirley Temple and quote unquote a whorehouse and how the hair became a thing. Bud Westmore is one of George's sons, and he ends up becoming the head of the makeup department of Universal Studios.
How did that happen, though?
Oh, yeah, there's a whole story behind that with his brother.
Mhm.
What's
Yeah.
his brother's name?
Ern.
Yeah, so tell us that story.
Percival and Ernie were twins. Ernie was going to get the spot.
Yeah. At
Ernie
Universal
was
Studios.
better known.
Mm-hmm.
And Percy, who was jealous, was like, no, I'm going to take you out and I'm going to get you fucking smashed. I'm going to get you fucking trashed
Because
the night before.
Ernie had issues. Well, I think they all had issues with alcohol, but Ernie specifically had issues with alcohol, I think.
Yep. And so Percy, Ernie had only had one, and he was like, okay, I need to go home. And Percy was like, no. I think we need to celebrate. Come on, let's have fun. Stay out with me. Let's hang out. And he got him freaking trashed.
Yep.
And then when Ernie went in to do his interview, he fucking blew it. He was trashed. He couldn't hardly keep it together. And so they ended up going with Bud instead, who wasn't as well known, but at least he's not an
Or
alcoholic.
as talented.
Yeah, or as talented, but at least he's not an alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
So that's why they didn't do it. And it
Well,
was really fucked up.
And at this time, Universal Studios' heyday for the monster movies was in the 30s.
Mhm.
And this is fast forward to the late 40s, I think.
Yeah, it was in the 1940s.
Yeah, and so Bud Westmore, he is well known for glamour beauty makeup, not for monster makeup, not for horror makeup, but he got hired because he's a name.
Yep. And that's a lot of why they would hire people at that time. If you had a name, they wanted you so that they could be like, ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Bud ends up hiring Milicent to be part of his department.
She was sitting in the makeup chair getting done up by Bud.
Mm-hmm.
And she showed him her drawings and he was like, oh, fuck, those are great. Let me hire you.
Oh, yeah, so that's how that happened.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Bud freaking hired Milicent based on her talent.
Yeah. Which will come back to bite him in the ass. And
Way
her,
later.
unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a big tidbit.
And then during this time, Milicent starts dating and marries Sid Beaumont. Which I don't remember what Sid does.
I don't remember.
He was
but
not in the
He was older
industry.
too, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
I think he might have been business. I guess, was it business or something? He wasn't in the industry. I just remember that.
He ends up being like her first or her one true love. I remember.
She loved him.
Yeah, and I do think he was older and probably was the most like non-drama, more solid relationship you ever had, I think. Grab your phones, guys, because I want you guys to Google this. 1952, Milicent works on It Came from Outer Space, which is a Ray Bradbury adaptation. So look up the monster or the alien from It Came from Outer Space because she helped design this creature.
It's fantastic.
Isn't it?
I love it.
Definitely they didn't have a big budget, I don't think, but you know what? She did what she could.
I like its one little eyeball.
Yeah, describe what
like-
it looks like.
It looks like a fucking tree trunk with an astronaut's helmet and like fucking
Martian hands.
yeah, Martian hands are like you know how like sticks look whenever they're fucking put on a snowman, kind of
Yeah.
like that. And then it looks like it's got some kind of like fucking
Its head is very large compared to its eyeball.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
It looks like it's got like what do you call it? Like veiny looking almost hair shit on it.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
I also like that the monster from It Came from Outer Space is called the Xenomorph.
The Xenomorph. Oh,
They
yeah.
tried to call it the Xenobut or whatever.
Yeah.
for a
Xenobut.
minute.
A combination of man and halibut.
Yes.
It was one of the options is for the creature's name.
You know, sometimes they didn't come up with the best names for things, but that's okay.
No. That was definitely...
Yeah, Xenomorph and then Xenobut was the one that came up.
What don't... Isn't the Xenomorph something that they also call the aliens from Alien?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I recognize that from. So I
Yeah.
wonder if they took that, adapted that.
Maybe.
I mean,
yeah.
they're both aliens, so.
Actually, that's what it says at the very bottom of the page. That's right, H.R. Geiger. Eat your heart out.
Oh.
Your xenomorphs in the Alien films are legendary, but Millicent did it before
Okay.
you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was like, I feel like that's a thing.
Nerd to nerd. She knows what's up.
Yeah.
And then
It's definitely unique.
she ends up working on Abbott and Costello Meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And also during this time, her mom passes away, which she is still estranged from her family at this point. So now is where we get to The Creature from the Black Lagoon. So there were a lot of different versions of the script for this too. But basically it originated as kind of similar to King Kong, but also having like somewhat of a Beauty and the Beast vibe.
The idea for Creature of the Black Lagoon began many years before 1953. In 1940, a man named William Allen was having dinner at the home of Orson Welles. And then another guest at the dinner was Mexican cinematographer Gabriel Figueroa, who brought up an outlandish story. According to him, and he insisted the story was true, there was a half-man, half-fish who lived in the Amazon. More than his appearance, the people were concerned about this creature's annual tradition of entering the village, claiming a maiden, and leaving, presumably to eat her or ravage her. Or to get her to start darning a mountainous pile of large damp socks.
I didn't get that reference, but okay.
Well, like, it was just like a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just silly.
Darning is like repairing.
Repairing socks.
Yeah. Oh, now I have to darn these. Darn these socks!
I've never heard that term before.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And in one of the footnotes, it says, I'm always curious as to how these monsters can tell on sight when someone is a virgin, a trick that nuns have been trying to master for centuries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was
So-
a lot of really nice, like, comical pieces
Oh
to
yeah.
this.
No, I really like Mallory's like little blips of things.
She has a sense of humor, and I dig it.
So she kind of, this whole chapter is kind of how this movie evolved, like the script evolved. There's a lot of different versions of the script. There's a lot of different names of the monster too. The Pisces man, which I think all of us were like, come on, that would have flown in the 70s, but not in the
yeah.
back whenever,
astrology was a big deal.
thing.
Yeah.
The Gill man landed as like a nickname, but the Creature. And then what's the one you guys like a lot?
Creech.
Creech. That's cute.
It is cute.
Kind of reminds me of Screech, though, from Saved by the Bell, which that guy's weird.
Yeah.
Or R.I.P. He's gone now, but he was weird.
Yeah.
Can we talk about one of the fucking weirdos that had the script for a while and was working on it?
Please do.
I
Go
wanted
ahead,
to
guys.
talk about that too, so
All
I'm
right.
really glad.
All right.
Arthur Ross is a dick.
Yeah, so Arthur Ross was one of the people that had it for a little bit and until it eventually changed hands.
The script.
The script, yes. And in an interview, he was talking about how he basically didn't... One of the things he said is, I wrote intelligent people doing intelligent things, which apparently did not include the woman, Kay, in the movie.
Yeah.
She is a scientist, but she's not one of the doctors that are on this expedition. But she is a scientist, so she obviously isn't an idiot. They wanted to basically encourage more of an empathetic and sympathetic feeling between Kay and the creature, and he wanted... Alan wanted more of like a story with those two in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas Arthur Ross was like, that's dumb. No, because women
Nobody
are
wants to see that.
stupid, whatever.
Romance.
Yeah.
So
strong female character.
So this man actually is quoted saying this in an interview that he was bitching about Alan wanting to put more of Kay's character into the film. And he's like, here comes this big creature with his cock 4 feet long. He's going to fuck her, and she gets away just in time, but she does think about him. Ha 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 ha. It's like, what?
Why you focus on this monster's dong?
And
I think he wanted some big old monster dog.
Yeah.
what does this have to do with the movie? Like,
Had nothing to do
You're
with
trying to
it.
make a porno.
there's no fucking in this movie.
Yeah.
I think there's like a kiss
Yeah.
between one of the doctors and Kay, and that's it.
That's one thing that I wanted to bring up is, if y'all know, you might not know, but the Hays Code was a thing, the wet blanket of Hollywood that put the kibosh on a lot of things, being like, that's too sexual, that's too whatever. So there's a whole part, which you're reading, about how they had to tone down the script because there's too much bestiality in it.
Yeah. And like eventually later on in that same quote, he's all like, underwater shots, the creature sees her, the creature gets an erection. Ho 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 ho. Like, what is up with this dude and dicks?
Yeah.
Why is he so obsessed?
I'm telling you, he wanted to make a porno.
Is this that weird like little boy thing where they're just obsessed with drawing dicks on everything?
Who knows? Maybe he had
Is this
some
the film equivalent?
or he had some unrepressed
Did he want to fuck a
things.
monster?
Yeah, who knows? I don't know.
I
But
don't know.
I'm glad that he was not the final writer of the script.
Thank God, because this movie would have been ruined.
Yes. No, the way it actually turned out was pretty good. They really wanted to make the creature a lot more sympathetic, which I
Yeah.
think really made it, like, help the film out a
Mhm.
lot.
I do too.
And also the fact that everything happens during the day. Nothing's really at nighttime.
Yeah.
Except I think the first scene might be at nighttime.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I
Like-
think there's one of the water scenes too. It's like at nighttime.
Yeah. But the majority of it happens in the day, which I think, is pretty, for the time, probably one of the first. And like we said, a lot of the Universal Studios monster films had happened like 10 years earlier. So this is like kind of, they're trying to resurge that. So this is like the big movie that's supposed to.
And most
Get
of
that
the,
again.
I mean, all those were on sets where most of it wasn't done on set either.
Yeah. Some of it was, but a lot of it they went on location for.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's good that they tried to get some empathy in there.
Oh, yeah. I think it honestly made it the film that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because we'll get into it, but when we were watching it, I definitely had more empathy for him than I did the people that invaded his fucking territory. So there are 2 actors that played the creature, one underwater and one on land. The underwater actor was Rico Browning. And then Ben Chapman was the actor on land.
There's a significant difference in height.
Yeah, and we need to talk about that because there were a lot of hurdles that they had to go through to create the costume.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had to make a costume that could go underwater. They had to make a costume that was a full body costume because before then, a lot of the Universal monsters, they would film it in a way where it wasn't a full body suit. It was like, okay, we got a close up of the head, we got the feet, it was never like the full body.
Right.
So they needed a full body suit, and both the actors were different body types.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of hurdles to go through.
Yeah, because one was like, what, 6'1" or 2",
Very
and the other
tall.
was like 5'6".
Yeah, I think Ben Chapman was the tall one, the land one. Because
Yeah, the guy on land was taller.
Yeah, which would make sense.
But they had, like, I remember they said something about, like, the plating on the belly. You could see that there was an extra plate in his.
Yep.
If you pay attention.
Yes. So the props department was originally tasked with making the costume, but they utterly failed. So then the special effects department took over, and this is where Milicent did her thing. So she designed it, like she illustrated what it would look like and everything. She did not actually like build the costume, but she is the reason why the costume looks like what it does.
Okay,
Right.
hold on. Have you guys ever looked at Riku?
No, let me see.
He's an attractive man.
Oh, I have seen that picture. Yes.
And he apparently was in the James Bond film Thunderball.
Oh, my.
He's a
cutie patootie.
He just needs to
Right?
be himself.
And
Yeah, he's a cutie patootie.
he also apparently
Sorry, Ben.
helped co-create the flipper like shit.
Flipper like shit. What do you mean?
The flipper, you're like,
Like the voice?
what? Hold on.
I
He
need
was
more
the
details.
voice of Flipper.
I need more details about the dolphin.
He was the co-creator of the Flipper Media franchise.
Apparently, Sam could have been Flipper. It was impressive, Sam.
No, I've definitely seen that picture before. He's a cutie patootie.
Yeah, even like as an old man, he's not that bad. Look at him, he's so
Aww.
cute. Look at him, he's so
He is
adorable.
cute.
Well, I was trying to look it up because I had heard, and I didn't know if this was real or not, and I didn't want to say it if it wasn't real. I had heard that it would have been him because it was the guy swimming.
Yeah.
As the monster was like an Olympic diving or medalist or something at some point, and I guess that's just false because I did not. Wikipedia did not tell me that.
He did have to fucking hold it. I remember seeing. Is it in my notes later? I don't remember. But he had to hold his breath for a long ass time because they didn't want bubbles to be appearing whenever he's underwater. So
Which
he
would
had to
make
hold his
sense
breath for like
since
4 fucking minutes.
Losing gills.
Yeah. So yeah, no, Rico. And here's another thing that I was gonna talk about. Both people, Rico and Ben, who played the creature, were uncredited.
Which is such bullshit.
Because they were monsters. They're not really appearing on it. It's so stupid. But now they are on IMDb, but they weren't at the time.
Oh, he also was the creature for the sequels.
Nice.
He was Dr. Burton on Flipper's New Adventure.
There you go. There's your flipper. That's so funny. So they also had issues with the eyes because all the close-up shots, like the eyes were big enough to where
You could see their face.
you could see their faces through
Mm-hmm.
it. So on all the close-up shots, they had a different mask so that literally
they
couldn't see anything because they had to, make it realistic or whatever.
Or it was like the tiniest little pupil.
Yeah, yep. And also they had issues with the suit floating when it was underwater.
Because
So
it
they
was
had
foam
I
latex.
think they had to put weights on him or something.
They had to add thin plates of lead to Rico's chest, thighs, and ankles to get him under the water.
Yeah.
Because the foam latex was
Yep.
causing him to float. But then whenever it started absorbing water, it was heavier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Because foam latex, there's a whole deep dive on that. Foam latex is really good for like sculpting things and making it look the shape that you want it to, but it also is not water resistant. It's going to bog down and everything. So the fact that they were able to successfully
Pull
make
this off. Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing, we'll get into it with the movie part, but we're literally talking about it now, so it's fine. I was impressed with how they were able to make he could move his mouth like a fish would. Like how a fish would, like,
he kept doing it. And I was
and
like, that's fucking
crazy. The
crazy.
gills would move on the side of his face.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's fucking badass. I was like, dude. And this came out in like 1955 or 56 or something like that. Like, that's pretty cool.
I
was
wonder
impressive.
if there was a mechanism in there that he could use with his mouth to make those things
like he
move.
blows in a straw.
Or like just like bite down and it moves.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so cool. I was like, dude. Ugh.
Milicent loved her work on the creature, and she described him in an interview. He's a complete monster. The shape he's in now, I think he's cute. But that's because I worked with him so long. He's expected to scare other people. He would probably create a sensation if he walked in here and ordered a drink, but nobody'd even look twice in Hollywood.
So then, 1955, okay, get your phones out again.
Okay.
1955, This Island Earth comes out. Look up the Metaluna Mutant. Because Milicent also...
Oh, I totally know this one.
Yeah!
Oh, yeah. Hey, look at that.
It's got very, like, Mars Attacks kind of...
It looks just like Mars Attacks stuff.
Yeah.
That's
so
funny.
I don't know. I haven't dived
not
into
just
that, but
like
I
it.
wonder if Tim Burton or his designers,
Probably.
I feel like they probably did have...
it was definitely
were
inspired.
Yeah. She fucking designed this shit.
That's terrifying, though.
Yep.
That's cool.
It's... So describe.
It looks like a mix between a bug, a robot, and a giant brain.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I do remember reading something about how they kind of got under budget with something. So like from the
pants.
From the pelvis on up, it's fine, but then they just threw some shiny pants on it.
Yeah. They were like, fuck these pants.
Yeah.
All right, whatever.
So
Good enough.
It looks great, but don't focus too much on the legs.
See, I don't even think that I didn't think they were shiny. I think that they were just like fucking corduroys, I think is what they said.
There's like, here.
They were just like dress slacks.
Yep.
And I mean, honestly, it's hard to really tell that they're any like
It's in
just
black
normal
and white.
pants. Because it's black and white.
Yeah.
They just look like a little baggy pair of pants.
That's much different than what I pictured in my mind when they were talking about an alien wearing pants.
Mm-hmm.
His brain looks kind of juicy.
The studio, Universal Studios, is really trying to promote Creature from the Black Lagoon because they're like, okay, this is our monster movie of this decade. Let's fucking do it. So they come up with this idea to do a publicity tour. And they're like, hey, why don't we have Milicent do this tour? She's fucking good looking. She created the design for the monster. Let's have her do it.
Although we can't actually tell anyone that.
Well, so their first version was that she
Yeah.
did go around and say, hey, I helped create this monster and this. And she would show all her work from like This Island. Well, not This Island Earth because it hasn't come out yet at this point. But like all of her other stuff. And she was just going to go around and promote the movie and somewhat herself, But then Bud fucking Westmore got wind of this and he was like, no, I don't want her to take credit for something she actually did and I didn't get to do. No. And so they had to appease him and they had to change it around.
So what they called that one was The Beauty Who Created the Beast.
Yeah,
that
first
was
one.
the original name of the tour.
Yep.
Which promoted Milicent as like this beautiful woman who could make designs for the monsters. And then, so that was what they were going to do. That was their original plan.
But then they changed it.
Because Bud's a bitch.
Yeah.
A bitch.
Bud's
Bud's
a bitch.
And basically he was pissed that she was going to get like
Full credit.
For his
not even full
for
credit.
his design that he didn't fucking design at all.
Yeah, which
just
he's
was in
known
the
to do.
room.
Apparently, he's known for because he is the head of the makeup department, so he's not actually creating anything. He is writing off nepotism in his name.
Yep.
He doesn't even do fucking monster makeup. He does a beauty makeup, and yet he is getting pissed off that she is getting credited for the work that she did and he did not do.
Yep. And I mean, I'm sure that Bud had some fucking inkling of talent because, he had to have at some point had some talent in his to get where he is. But he was a dick who basically just jumped in every fucking picture that he could. Like, they said all the time.
Yep.
That every time that people come in to take pictures and stuff of, like, the behind the scenes stuff, he would, like, grab a paintbrush or, like, go fucking pose next to a picture to be like, yeah, I did this. But, like, there's pictures of him, like,
holding a paintbrush
backward.
Yeah, it's like he doesn't even know how to fucking do any of this shit.
He's just a shit.
So they had to rechange all of the concept of the tour so that Milicent, she got like a script basically that things that she could say during an interview, the things that she could not say during an interview. Yep. And she was like, okay, yep, I'll do it, because she knew that this was like a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah, she was like, I'm a woman who's working in Hollywood doing these things, and that's not normal.
Yeah.
Like, sure, I might be uncredited, but I'm making money doing what I love to do, which is pretty impressive.
And in the end, there was even proof that she totally followed those guidelines by the book.
Yep.
And didn't say anything bad about him, didn't say that she created, she let everyone know that Bud did, and he still just did not give a fuck.
Yeah.
So they renamed it The Beauty Who Lives with the Beasts, and that was the tour.
She's the caretaker. She's the mom now.
Yeah.
She's the mother of all these monsters.
Because women can only be a mom, a daughter, a sister, a wife. They can't have these other, roles outside of those. And I think that's what kind of annoyed me about that more than anything.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and also, we have to think about, she had to stop her work at Universal Studios to go on this tour, too. So she kind of was like, okay, well, I'm going to not give up, but I'm going to postpone this for a while to go on this tour. And that ends up biting her in the butt because of what Bud does to her.
Yeah. Because he promised that she would still have a job when she came back.
So she agreed to it because she's like, okay, I'm going to have a job. I'm going to go on this tour. I'm going to come back and have a job at Universal Studios.
Bud was initially bad-mouthing the whole thing. He was bad-mouthing the whole production. He's like, no, this is going to be a fucking shit show of a thing. But then whenever he saw how much people were, like, pouring time and effort.
He saw, like, the test screening and everyone was actually liking it. Good of a reception the screenings were getting.
Yep. He was like, oh, shit, maybe there's something good here.
So never mind. He's like, oh, wait, I want to be a part of this.
Yeah, I actually love it.
And it's so fucking ironic because he's the reason he hired her. Yeah. Because of her talent. And then now that he's seeing...
He wanted her talent, but he wanted to use her talent to promote himself.
Fuck that guy. Ugh.
I think probably that backtracking also pissed him off. Like, and made it worse than it maybe would have been. Because then he was like, well, now I look like a fucking idiot.
Well, he was a fucking idiot.
I mean, I'm not saying he wasn't.
So, she ended up going on this tour. And, everybody loved her because she is being herself and just has that presence, you know? Like, she followed all the rules, credited Bud for everything. But the thing is, all the people that interviewed her were like, oh, I get it.
They could see through it.
They put two and two together. They're like, she's the one that actually created the monster. So she had no control over what they actually published.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But then Bud Westmore would read these articles and be like,
that bitch is fucking shit
I wasn't even mentioned. Whoa! And so he's getting his panties in a wad because he's all like fucking pissed that she's getting all the credit, even though she's doing exactly what she was supposed to do.
So there was a memo that Mallory was able to find in a pile of stuff.
It was like the USC film library of some sort. She like went there for like a day. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it detailed just different damage made to her wardrobe during this tour. And I was just like, what in the fuck happened?
Yeah.
And Mallory was also like, what happened to her on tour? Did they escort her with a pack of hyenas? So the list was 1 cocktail dress, completely ruined. 1 cocktail dress, beating, broken, and lost. 1 gabardine suit, shrunk and can't be repaired. 1 lace coat, burned, torn, and shrunk. Ruined beyond repair. 1 afternoon dress, torn but repairable. One pair of earrings cut in half by publicity man and stones are lost. One velvet blouse torn can be repaired. It's like, the fuck is she doing?
Sounds like she was having a good time, I guess.
What the fuck that was?
No.
I'm like, how did she have time from driving all over the damn place to tear and shrink and
I
ruin
love
her
that you
shit?
literally wrote "what the fuck happened" in the side margins.
I was like, what is going on here?
That was my thought too. Whenever I read that, I was like, "What the fuck happened?"
Well,
to
and also
this?
it's like she probably did have a lot of fun, but also it was like back to back. Like she was
Yeah.
on it all the time.
she was doing like
Yeah.
4 shows a day.
Yeah.
4 interviews a day. So,
I have lots of little funny little beep 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 beeps.
while
the margins,
she
yeah.
was on the road, Bud went into Sam Israel's office, who was the assistant studio plus publicity director, and he wouldn't say how much he resented the attention she was getting, but he said basically that he was afraid Milicent would claim sole credit for the creature. And Sam was like, okay, bud. Like, he saw through it. He was like,
Mhm.
all right.
A lot of the studio heads did.
Yes.
Because they knew that they hired him because of his name, not because of his talent.
Listen, Bud's first wife was with him for 3 months and then divorced his
Whew.
ass because he was a cruel man.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah.
So Sam sent letters to Universal's New York office and complained about Bud. But like Bud had his reputation, and so there wasn't really anything that could be done about it. Like,
Yeah.
he was a big name and they weren't going to lose him. And so Milicent was up against something that she couldn't have stopped. It didn't
Yeah.
matter what
Yeah.
what was done. And I think she kind of knew that. I think that's why she didn't fight, because I think
Because they realized he's full of shit, but they were also like, well, it's either her or him. We gotta get rid of her. They tried to blame. They actually like. There's a part where they wrote letters to
have
him
that.
to try to placate him,
Mm-hmm.
that was
but
so
that
stupid.
didn't work. And so they were like, okay, well, I guess we gotta let her go because he's just,
So
up
he
in
fired her
arms.
while she was gone,
Yep.
because he was the head of that department, so
Yep.
he could.
Yep.
And nobody could really have any say about that.
So she's working her fucking ass off, destroying all of her dresses.
Yes.
And not knowing that she's getting fired, she's going to go back home and she's not going to have a fucking job.
Yeah.
So basically, when she got back, she found out that she didn't have a job anymore. He was firing people left and right. Basically, anytime anybody else was getting attention for his work that wasn't his work, he'd get pissed and fire them, or he'd give them the silent treatment and make their lives so miserable that they'd fucking quit.
March 5th, 1954 was the nationwide release of Creature from the Black Lagoon. Quote, instead of spending the March celebrating the release of Creature from the Black Lagoon, Milicent spent it adjusting to unemployment. She didn't fight back. Milicent took her removal from the makeup department with the grace that was expected of the women of her time. There was no storming into Bud's office. There were no angry letters or phone calls to executives over at Universal. No reaching out to the press. There wasn't too much that she thought she could do. Milicent was removed from the development team from This Island Earth. She wasn't credited for her illustrations in the Westmore Beauty book. Captain Lightfoot and This Island Earth went forward in production, still utilizing the makeup, hair, costume, and monster designs she helped create. She would never work behind the camera in Hollywood ever again. With Milicent gone from the Universal makeup department, Bud was free to spread the word that he created the creature, a myth that would persist for decades to come.
Yeah, he was a fucking asshole.
Yeah, he literally just... It just infuriated me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, she is so fucking talented, and you are so scared by that you have to rip that from underneath her and take everything she has away from her. And then take her work and still use it.
Yeah. He's just like a big fucking bully.
Yep, that's all he is. But the thing you need to know about Bud Westmore is that he was a dick.
Yeah.
That's the quote from Mallory.
There's also a part that I thought I would mention, because Sam, you were talking about how you're kind of irritated with Mallory on how her perspective on Milicent and her dressing up. There's another point where she talks about how she's like, I was so frustrated that Milicent didn't. She just backed down.
Yeah.
She didn't fight back. She just was like, ah. But then I think that's another way of her realizing, hey, like, that's just how it was back then, and maybe now she would have done something different. But I think that's another way of, like, she was so
what
frustrated.
option did she have?
Exactly. But then realizing, stepping back and seeing, like, it's a different time, it's a different person, she would react a different way than I would. Because I highlighted that because I was like, yeah, I mean, I was not, my first reaction was not mad at Milicent. It was definitely mad at Bud.
Yeah, for sure. Same.
And I get her frustration, for sure, but it's like, you know, everyone deals with things in different ways. It's also like abuse situations. Like, you can't tell someone, why didn't you fight back? Maybe I felt too scared to fight back. Maybe I knew that walking away was the best thing to do.
Well, we're going back to, like, the whole Bud was definitely like Camille, and at that point it's like, nothing that she could have said or done would have convinced Camille any different about who she was as a person.
Right.
And I feel like she probably had the same thought about Bud. Like, there's nothing I can say or do that's going to change his mind. All these other people tried, and he still just didn't give a fuck and had it out for me. Like, why bother?
And she's still just as strong for walking away than fighting.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's the best.
Yeah.
It's the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
That's, like, where Mallory gets in that. But it took her, like, I remember reading that too, and I was like, why would you be pissed at Milicent for that shit?
Yeah.
But then she says, yeah, it would have been amazing if she went back to all those newspapers who interviewed her and gave them a news story about what a turd Bud Westmore was. But why was I being so hard on her? Wasn't she allowed to say, fuck this? And she is. Like, of course she is. Sometimes it's easier to just be like, well, that fucking happened, and move on with your life.
Yeah.
It's way easier than, and she didn't like conflict. Like, you can see very clearly that she didn't like conflict because of the way she avoided everything that she did. Like, she avoided conflict in any way she possibly could. She didn't get involved in politics. She didn't get involved in issues that would be controversial. She was just like, yeah, I'm not going to deal with all that shit.
Now we kind of get into Mallory diving into and finally finding, because she tries to find Milicent's death certificate and she can't find it. Like, she tries. She can't find it. There's a whole story about it.
That was actually really
pretty comical for me. Yeah. It's not a DMV, but some kind of records office.
It's just like,
she had to wait in line forever, and then
it's the county clerk.
It's like at the courthouse.
Yeah. And, like, she went by so many names. She was like, I don't even know who to look up. Like,
she basically listed every, like, name, but the gal at the county clerk office, like, was so chill about it. So then her second thing that she did was, one of her friends was like, well, you know what you need to do.
Yes, this part was funny. I was like, well, hold on a second. Makes sense,
like,
but I was shocked.
I was like, yep, that makes sense.
You need to go to the Mormons.
The Mormons?
And I was like, what the fuck?
I was like, wait, huh?
Yeah, I was very confused. Apparently, if you've ever used Ancestry.com, you've gone to the Mormons for help. Because it's because of them, I guess.
I didn't know that they founded. I mean, she didn't blatantly say that, but from what she said,
their record keeping is basically a field
they founded Ancestry.com, I think.
So they're polygamists, which, you know.
What?
Yeah, and so the families can be really big. And also they participate in, I guess they call it necrogamy.
Yeah. That was fucking weird.
That was a new term for me. I was like, hold up. What?
Yeah, I was like, I've heard of this. Like, there was somebody who did this in France where they, like, married their fiance after they died. Anyway. So basically, necrogamy is the process of marrying the dead, and Mormons believe marriages last all the way into the eternity and beyond, and they don't want anybody being left behind and lonely. So you can get married to a person when you're dead, or yeah.
You can get married to a person when you're dead?
Yeah, so they believe that you can get
yeah.
married.
Vice versa.
They believe that you can get married when you're dead, either to a living person or another dead person.
Okay, but what about consent of the dead person?
Yeah, where's the consent?
That was a whole thing with
What
the
if
French
I don't
thing.
want to marry you?
Yeah.
Yeah, the necrogamy. How do you say it?
Necrogamy.
Yeah, that I had never heard of
Or
before.
necrogamy?
Necrogamy?
I think when the audiobook, it was necrogamy.
That's how I would say it.
But it makes sense why Mormons have such a big focus on like genealogy and like your family tree and shit like that.
Well, it also makes sense because if they're in the past when there was polygamy, you don't want to marry into all of that.
Yeah.
So they had to make sure the bloodlines weren't being like.
You don't want to accidentally marry your cousin.
Mallory ends up going to like some Mormon library or something.
Yeah.
And her describing it, I was like, I would be so fucking awkward just as she was.
She went in as like, she was dressed like a fucking cat burglar.
Yeah, she's like, I was trying to be unassuming, and then as I'm in my Uber driving there, I'm like, oh, I look like a fucking cat burglar.
Because she like dressed all in black and like
had like a hoodie on, or like a hoodie and like a little
beanie.
sock beanie on, or
Honestly,
whatever.
she could look. She was also dressed like she worked in an art gallery.
Yeah,
so I mean, it's fine.
She probably looks super cute.
It's how I dressed when I worked in an art gallery. It's fine.
which is funny.
So she ended up finding Milicent's nephew, Lawrence Green.
Yes.
In the computer database of this Mormon facility. So she runs out and she calls him, and he actually answers, and she kind of like does like a vomit, like, blah, 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 this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, hey, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, Aunt Mid?
He's like, okay.
Well, let me connect you with my sister, Gwen, because she was really close with her.
Yeah.
And so then we get connected to Gwen, who is Milicent's niece.
Which is Mallory's savior.
Yes. Yeah.
Gwen sounds super badass.
She sounds like a cute little thing.
She does sound so cute.
And so Mallory ends up calling Gwen. Oh, no. What happens is Lawrence gives Gwen Mallory's number, and then Gwen calls her back later that day, and they have a little chat.
Looking her up.
And they start talking, and then Mallory asks, can I still speak to Milicent? And Gwen says, no, she passed away in 1998.
Yeah. But not in LA.
Yeah.
And basically said that she wasn't, like, she's like, well, I can't find anything on her. And she's like, well, you won't, because she wasn't buried. She was cremated.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool.
So then Gwen kind of invites her. She's like, hey, let me talk to my husband. Well, maybe you should come visit me. And maybe we could just talk about things.
Yeah.
You know?
And so they pick a weekend and they get to do that.
Yeah. Which I think is really cute that like a stranger, like literally strangers coming together. It's really
Especially
cool.
these days.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I think she was just so excited that someone was actually
interested
in like remembering her and her, artistry and what she actually did. That, I mean, hell, if I was Gwen, I'd be about that too. So
oh yeah, me too.
It was
definitely
super cool.
It was super cool. So Milicent still is doing extra work. She, got blacklisted from the makeup department, the special effects department, but she's still doing extra work. And this is where she works on Man Without a Star with Kirk Douglas. And she's still doing like the illustration, the portraits of actors. And there's a picture of the illustration she does of Kirk Douglas. I think it's like a picture of him holding it or something.
No, it's her holding it.
Yeah, but
and
he's
like next to her.
Yeah.
Next to him.
And it looks fucking identical. She is so talented.
She is very good.
So this is like, it's just one of those things where like she gets let go from Universal and then just shit hits the fan and it's just one thing after another.
Yeah. I mean, she does like one movie a year or something?
Yeah. At this point, she does
50s.
one movie a year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because she's trying to keep that
SAG card. Yep. Yep. So in 1954, Sid gets diagnosed with cancer and unfortunately passes away, which, like we said,
in a very short amount of time.
Oh yeah, because he probably it was not detected until later.
It was like stage 4 or
and he was
something.
also way older than her, I think. But he was definitely her true love, and she was definitely heartbroken after that.
Yep.
And then she meets Lee Trent, who was the voice of the Lone Ranger, because the Lone Ranger was a radio show before it was a TV show, if you guys didn't know. And he was the voice of the Lone Ranger. And apparently he was also very attractive. He ended up becoming a salesman for women's clothing, and then a company called Constan, which from what it was described felt like Amway or like some kind of like pyramid scheme type of thing.
It
Do you guys remember
like
that?
Avon before
Yeah,
Avon.
Avon. Like a weird, like, it was
Avon
weird.
Curry.
Yeah, he's like a salesman for, it's called Constan. What a not great name.
Yeah.
Literally have con in the name. We
Huh?
get you. We know what you are. Take a note from Addie Prey. Jesus.
All right.
Be a little more subtle. She starts an interior design business.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the point where I put in parentheses, what didn't she do? Because literally, she's so fucking goddamn
She
talented.
did like everything.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Lee for just a
let's
minute.
talk about Lee.
He was tall.
He was tall.
He was very good looking,
Yeah.
supposedly.
I mean, he's an old guy. It's
Not as hot as Riku, or whatever his name is. Riku?
Hell to the yeah.
Is that how you say his name?
Riku?
Yeah, Riku.
It basically says,
I have feelings.
Ooh, things are stirring in my
little fishy
groin.
feelings.
Oh,
so basically says Lee was rich, but he was bitter because he didn't make it in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So he was one of those crotchety old dudes who constantly lament the passing of the good old days. But what Milicent liked about him was, I guess, he really loved her personality. And so she felt like he actually saw beyond her figure.
I mean, I'm sure he also enjoyed her tits because they look pretty fabulous. But
I mean,
Boobs.
hey yo,
Oh!
Yeah.
Going back to the wolf.
yeah.
he had 2 kids from a previous marriage, but he didn't see them very frequently. And he was always traveling for his job. And while he was out traveling, he picked up lots of girlfriends all over the world and continued to see his first wife, even though he was with Milicent. And he wasn't very good at hiding it.
Hence why they were on again, off again for several years.
Like 30 years.
A long
on
time.
again,
They ended
off
up getting
again.
married and then divorcing, and I think getting married again.
Yeah, they were gonna get married again.
I think they eloped in Las Vegas at some point.
That was
I don't
the
remember.
first marriage, yeah. They were engaged like 8 times, but they only got married once, and then they got divorced.
Mhm.
And then they got together several times after the divorce.
And they were only divorced like a year or something. It wasn't very long.
No, they were constantly in and out of that relationship.
Yeah.
And
They
then
also had a lot of elegant parties, and
she liked to host.
Milicent got into like the
She was good at
socialite
cooking.
lifestyle. You
Yeah.
know, she did a lot of charity things, a lot of parties.
Yeah.
So she was in it. She just wasn't like a big star, but she was smoozing with all the
Yeah.
elite stars,
And it's around that time that Camille died as well.
Yeah, 1958. He
Yep.
passes away. Milicent still continues to receive fan letters from people that saw her on her tour and everything. The ones that weren't circumnavigated from Bud Westmore. And then Bud is finally fired from Universal.
I read one of Mallory's footnotes. So it says, in yet another blow to women's history, in 1957, Bud Westmore was hired to design the original makeup look for Barbie, helping to throw generations of young girls into self-esteem crises.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a little annoyed because he also took design credit or makeup design credit for some serious films and television series, and one of them is The Monsters, and it's my absolute fucking favorite, and now I'm mad about it.
You know he didn't fucking do that shit.
No, I know, but now I'm mad.
But I'm not shocked about the Barbie thing because that's literally... There's a part when they're talking about that Westmore book, the makeup of Westmore, whatever the fuck it is that Milicent worked on, and it's like, oh,
That he didn't give her any credit for at all.
No, but not even that. Like, this is the reason why women have all these expectations of beauty, because this book was written by a bunch of fucking men.
Yeah.
Same fucking thing.
Yep.
I am not that surprised.
Well,
Like, that actually makes sense that he helped with that.
it's, you know what? He still got what the fuck he deserved, because he eventually got fired.
Yep.
And then he ended up being a drunk.
That was not funny, but it was
He led a
kinda
pitiful
funny.
life is what I wrote in my notes.
Yeah. I mean, he honestly did, because it really wasn't that long after he got fired that he just went downhill.
I can't believe how long they kept him at Universal, though. It was a long...
24 years.
That's a long-ass time.
Well,
to
now-
especially-
support a man baby.
Especially in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Like, that's a long-ass fucking goddamn
that
time.
was the thing that kind of cracked me up about the whole situation, was it said 24 years is a long time to work anywhere. Most people would make close friends in that time. Close friends that would rally to support them. Not Bud. Bud had years of angry artists and assistants he had ripped off and abused. Years of Universal staff members hearing about his terrible behavior, and he was let go.
And so he also, and it's funny because like he's the one abusing and taking credit for all these people, right? Saying that he's doing all this makeup, but then once he got fired, he had a couple of freelance makeup jobs, but he didn't end up actually doing them because he was embarrassed and thought they were too low. It's like, okay, so if you've been doing this for 24 years,
fucking ego.
this
Well,
is too low now.
He
But
said,
no, you're just out of fucking practice.
I haven't got
And
the
also-
guts. I don't know how to do daily makeup anymore.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the fucking talent.
Yeah.
No. So, in
Fuck
1973,
that guy.
at 55, he died of a heart attack because he just basically fucking gave up, and he ended up having heart problems.
55,
and
that's pretty fucking early.
It is.
It is very early, yes.
But I liked that right after he died, she's like, I
Gonna-
think I'll just update my resume.
Yeah! Good
And
for her!
I made the
I would have
preacher.
done the exact
Yeah.
thing, fucking thing.
P.S.
So
She has
funny.
no reason not to.
It was
right?
me.
Who's gonna fucking
Yeah.
stop her now?
Milson was, by the way, I'm the one that helped create that fucking thing.
Mhm.
Like, good for... And this goes back to what we were talking about, where Mallory was, like, all infuriated that she didn't fight back. This is her fighting back.
Yeah.
She's reclaiming that.
It was
You do
so
it
funny
whenever
to
it's
me.
right and whenever it's ready.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she was ready and right for that.
100%.
And-
Good for her.
And people knew. Everyone
Oh,
in
yeah.
the industry basically fucking knew.
Yeah.
They knew he was a blowhard and was just taking credit.
No, she didn't get to have it all in the patriarchal way that women are pressured to strive for. Get a husband, a stable job, buy a house, have children. Some of those things or all of those things might be what women genuinely want. I do not believe that there are better or worse kinds of happiness and fulfillment for one woman. Raising children as a stay-at-home mom can bring just as much satisfaction and joy as being a traveling artist might be for another. So it's like, basically, she wanted to highlight that Milicent remained happy as best she could with all of the things she was happy with what she was doing.
Yeah.
She was an artist. She was enjoying her life. She had a gorgeous house that she designed for herself, and she was very happy in that setting. And like, regardless of all of the tragedies that, befell her, she was still happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a really important thing to discuss. And I think that that's, in general, a really important thing to discuss when it comes to being a woman, is that ideal picture perfect that everybody like pressures us toward isn't perfect for everyone.
Well, or just not even women, just people in general. Like, what you thought was what would make you happy 20 years ago might not be what would
It's
make you
not.
happy. Like,
Yeah.
me personally, what made me happy 10 years ago is not what's making me happy now. And I changed that. And what's making me happy now is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
I think that's very relevant to what Milicent went through. Like,
Yes.
she had a very fulfilling life. Yeah, a lot of tragedy, just like everybody. But I think she made the most of it. And, that means that she was a strong, powerful woman for that.
Yeah.
And she didn't get enough credit for that.
No. I think even though, like, you know, for the time, having kids was basically a woman's, like,
And she couldn't do that. Yeah.
Aspiration.
From a young age, she couldn't do that.
And I think she seemed fairly okay with that because she got to enjoy other things that made her happy, and she accepted it. And I think that's very rare and awesome.
Her sister Ruth still did not agree with Milicent's lifestyle, but she didn't want her kids to not have that, which good that she thought that, because Ruth ended up being very close to Milicent, and I feel like Milicent
Gwen.
and her relationship very much, not Ruth,
Gwen
got very close to Milicent, and I think the relationship very much so, like, yeah, it's a aunt and a niece, but it's also more than that because Milicent never had kids. And also Ruth seems like someone that was not the most welcoming, loving mother. So I don't
think she wasn't a loving mother. I think she just poo-pooed the ideas of...
Yeah.
I
don't think I'm not saying that, but it's different. Like, it's like a different relationship.
They had different ideals.
I don't think she understood Milicent. I think she was still caught up in believing what her father had told her about Milicent. So she still thought she was this hussy, you know, when realistically she was just doing her.
Yeah. And so before we get to so they get reconnected, but there's a mudslide that wrecks Milicent's home
that she loves deeply,
and practically bankrupts her because her homeowner's insurance won't fucking cover it. Shocking.
All right.
You live in California and you don't have mudslide coverage. That sucks. Like, that fucking sucks. Like, seriously, like, all the hardships you went through. And then Lee dies.
In January 1988, while Lee was at his home in Canada, he had an accident and broke his leg. A blood clot from the wound traveled to his lungs, killing him. He was 78. Milicent was devastated, and she would never have another relationship or marry again.
There's also a point where Milicent actually visits Hearst Castle again. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah, that was actually like just before this.
Yeah, it was just before that, but...
So like there was the mudslide, and then there was like a woman who came in.
She was at part of a club because she was kind of a socialite.
Yeah.
Her name was Adela Rogers St. John's, and she was a featured speaker. And her career began at the San Francisco Examiner, which was one of those papers that was owned by William Randolph Hearst.
Yeah.
And so she talked about Hearst and San Simeon and talked about its beauty. And then Milicent said to Adela, you know, my father built that. I lived there for 10 years. I haven't been back since. And Adela said, don't go. You'll be so disappointed.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then like all of the like fucking socialites from the club were like, let's go on a fucking trip. Woo! And so they all like fucking packed their bags and went. And of course... Milicent went with them. But when she got there, she asked about her father, and they were like, we don't know who that is. And so that's when she recorded that video, because she was trying to bring
that's
that stuff back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. That interview. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So,
and then we get a little bit more detail into Milicent and Gwen's relationship, which is very heartbreaking.
But yeah, Milicent had Parkinson's.
Yeah, she ended up getting Parkinson's disease.
Which is so sad.
And she kind of had like a staff that was supposed to be coming in and like checking on her, but Gwen would come in and visit her because they lived like a couple hours apart. And Gwen would come visit her, and she realized, oh shit, no one is really taking care of her.
Yeah.
So Gwen ended up coming to she wasn't like live in, but she would visit her.
Well, there was like a night that so Gwen came to visit, and Milicent was 80 years old and living in filth, and the people she had hired were there only to take care of Milicent. They didn't take care of the house. and she wasn't really able to clean up on her own, and she wasn't eating well. She ate like shit.
Yeah.
And then Milicent asked Gwen to sleep in the bedroom with her, and Gwen made up a bed on the floor, and then she woke up to what?
Rats crawling all over the place.
Yeah.
A horde of rats.
Yep. So obviously Milicent was not being taken care of the proper way, which
Well, it wasn't.
unfortunately happens a lot.
Well, I don't think it was that kind of. Okay, so I don't think that they were neglecting her. So
I don't think she had the right kind of care.
Yeah,
though.
I think she had
That's what I
home
mean.
health, which
Only takes care of your health
They
needs. It
stop
doesn't-
in and
yeah. Sometimes they'll clean a little bit of stuff, but it's not like
A maid service.
A maid
Uh-huh.
service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
they
I
sweep
get
the
that.
floor and mop.
She wasn't getting the right care.
Yes.
So Gwen ended up becoming her caretaker basically.
On the weekends.
On
So
the weekends, yeah.
She made an arrangement with the the home health team that they'd come in and do stuff 5 days a week, and then she'd come in on the weekends and help take care of her.
And then they talked about how I forget Gwen's husband's name, but Milicent was
Frank.
like, "Ooh, that guy's a handsome man."
She liked Frank.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
liked Frank, and how she would ask for mimosas, but they weren't actually. She just wanted the champagne.
Yeah. It was pretty cute.
Woman after my own heart. Except I don't
Girl,
want
I get
champagne.
you.
Give me the gin.
The one that got me was whenever Gwen wanted to make sure that Milicent had all of her affairs in order and stuff. So she'd hired like a lawyer to come and talk to her privately.
Yeah.
And then it says, when he arrived, he was tall, handsome older gentleman, and Milicent was immediately aflutter. As Gwen was leaving the room, he asked Milicent how old she was. She looked him in the eye and said, "I'm 60, darling." Gwen's jaw dropped as Milicent shot her the best hold your tongue look she could manage with her Parkinson's. Gwen said, "Mum's the word, sweetheart. If you're 60, I'm about 35.
Yep. She just
So-
seemed like a good person to hang out
Like,
with.
yeah.
it'd be fun,
And I
yeah.
love
It was
that they
cute.
had that relationship because,
Yes. It's
she never had a good family relationship until Gwen came into the picture. So I'm
Mhm.
so glad that they had that.
Me too. It was very
Relationship.
cute.
Yep.
You could tell they loved each other.
And so unfortunately Milicent develops breast cancer.
So the day that Milicent died, Gwen got into the hospital bed and held her, which is such a cute and sad little memory.
Yeah.
And Gwen told her how much she loved her and how much God loved her. And Milicent just shook her head, and Gwen insisted again that God loved her always, and Milicent started to cry. She said, "God doesn't love me." And it was the last thing she said, and she took her family's message to heart right to the end, but she wasn't alone. And she died on February 24th, 1998 at 82 years old.
Yeah.
And that is so fucking sad. Like,
That really bothered me.
It really hurt me a lot.
yeah, like
that-
I kind of want to cry a little bit right now because I'm
Yeah.
like, my God, like all the things that she went through and all she really wanted was someone to fucking love her.
Yeah.
Wanted her family to love her because really being with a man wasn't necessarily her main goal.
No,
Like,
it
she
never
just
was.
wanted to live her life how she wanted to live it. And if a guy came along, cool. But like,
It wasn't what she was about.
Yeah.
no. And that is the fucking saddest thing. Especially as your last words. Like,
Yeah,
It just
I know.
really
that
Bothered me. And it bothered me
Yeah.
too that those were her last words for Gwen. That
Yeah.
bothered me for Milicent, and it bothered me for Gwen, because
Yeah.
how heartbreaking is it to lose someone you love,
but to know that's
but
how
to
they
know
felt.
they felt that
yeah.
that they weren't loved.
I thought it was very sad.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that just hurt my little hospice heart.
Well,
Yeah.
Milicent, none of us feel that way. You are definitely loved, and
You are an
also
amazing
you
lady.
live on in this book forever and always.
Great job,
Thanks to
Mallory.
Mallory. Yep.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mallory. I really reading this book for the second time. I did enjoy it. It's not like the most stellar writing ever, but at the same time, you know what? The fact that Mallory gave Milicent her podium and just let her shine.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what really captivated me to this book.
Yeah, no, Milicent was definitely a very interesting character, and I think she was extremely brave and had so many interesting experiences, but didn't seem to let it go to her head.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
She seemed very grounded, considering.
She's very grounded. Yeah, did not have a big ego.
Mm-mm.
I think she just wanted to make the best of the life she had, and I think she did a pretty good job of it.
Yeah.
She was dealt a pretty shit hand and still made the best of it and still found happiness, which I love.
Yeah.
And I liked that she found, you know, some closure at the end of her life, I think, with Gwen and having some of those
I'm
positive
definitely glad that she
feelings.
had that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It just sucks that her last words were
I know.
that, because that's what sucks, is like people sometimes are the worst all the time.
People are
You're
always
their worst
enemy.
critic and you don't
Yeah.
see how loved you are.
Mhm.
Well,
And that's point example.
It also doesn't help that her whole entire family basically shunned her. Like,
Yeah.
one of the footnotes
Besides
was that,
Gwen.
one of the footnotes was that she never ended up reconnecting with Ulrich, her brother.
He died first, didn't he?
Yeah, he was the first one to die. He died in 1966, if I remember correctly from the footnote. And she had even asked Gwen to move in with her, and Gwen was like, "Fuck a no." And I was like, she didn't do any of these crazy ass things, and she certainly wasn't at the time, because she was walking with a cane. She was obviously like not able to be this Hollywood playgirl that they made her out to be.
I did-
You mean Gwen or Ruth?
I'm sorry, Ruth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
She asked Ruth to move in with her, and
She
Ruth was
didn't.
like, no. And then like a year later, Ruth died. So it was like
Yeah.
her whole immediate family was fucking gone. And she never had anything. She never got to really do anything with Ulrich's children. And her and Lawrence, Ruth's son, they didn't really have a relationship either. So I was like, it was really just Gwen and Frank.
Yeah. I remember Gwen talked about how, I think it was after she passed away, all of Millicent's friends were talking to her, and she got to put to rest all of the like family rumors, which was like basically that she was a fucking prostitute, which was so fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, to believe that your whole life because that's what's being spoon-fed to you is so fucked.
All right. So now on to the movie adaptation, which I know we already talked about this movie a lot. So my section is going to be a little shorter than normal. But like we said, The Creature from the Black Lagoon was released in 1954. It has a 6.9 out of 10 stars on IMDb. Directed by Jack Arnold and stars Richard Carlson, Richard Denning, and Julie Adams. As we said, Riku, how do you say his name? Riku Browning and Ben Chapman played the Gilman. So I was looking at the credits, and on the makeup department, Milicent is literally the last one to be credited. She's at the bottom of the list, which I'm like, fuck that. She should be at the top of the fucking goddamn list.
But is it
Monster wouldn't even
because
be
she
there
was
without her.
the last discovered to be,
I don't know, but it still
Could
pisses
be.
me off.
you know?
Not right.
That's not right.
It ain't
It's not
right.
It ain't right.
It ain't right. All right, I wanted to share with you some some funny taglines, because there's a part in the book where they're like really like trying to promote the movie, and
Oh,
so I
God.
wanted to show with you some funny taglines from the movie. Not since the beginning of time has the world beheld terror like this. Centuries of passion pent up in his savage heart. That's the bestiality right there.
Yeah, I guess so.
Clawing monster from a lost age strikes from the Amazon's forbidden depths. And lastly, from the Amazon's forbidden depths came the creature from the Black Lagoon. And then I have a few trivias, fun facts for us.
Yay.
This one's gonna crack you guys up.
Oh
You gotta wait though.
Okay.
It's a slow burn.
dear.
Forrest J. Ackerman, a horror and science fiction writer for Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, bought the mask and claws of the creature's costume from a young man who had once used them as a Halloween costume. The costume pieces were discarded by Universal after production had finished on the 3 films, Creature from the Black Lagoon and its 2 sequels, and were later recovered from the studio's dumpster by a janitor who thought the ensemble would make a good Halloween costume for his son. Other costume pieces were recently sold at auction by Bud Westmore, who was an assistant to Milicent Patrick, the original designer of the costume. Fuck you, Bud Westmore. I read that and I'm like, he's probably rolling in his goddamn grave.
Good.
He
was
should.
Called an assistant to, which
Oh.
I think that's a typo, like fact checking wise, but like also that's actually true.
Yeah. I mean, he really didn't do anything.
I had to reread that. I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna quote that shit because honestly, that's more accurate than not accurate.
Where's that from?
IMDb.
Mm.
Check that shit out, Mallory.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
Mallory's the one who wrote that.
Maybe. Yeah.
Because can anybody go in and edit those?
I don't know.
I think so because some of the things I'm like, this is not. There were some typos and stuff. I think it's kind of like Wikipedia, where
Get it, Mallory.
yeah,
Right?
where you can like edit it and whatever. But I was reading it and I was like, I'm gonna keep that in there because
I love it.
even if it's not factual, it is factual.
And
Give
so
credit where credit is
hilarious.
due.
Yes.
All right, Riku Browning, a professional diver and swimmer. See, you were saying that he wasn't though.
I was,
But this is-
I saw it was like he was in a like Olympic.
Oh.
So I don't know if
You know, who knows factual lies on
I don't
IMDb.
We
but
just know that he's gorgeous.
yes,
he's
is
a
that good looking?
beautiful man that swims. All right.
And well.
Riku Browning, a professional diver and swimmer, was required to hold his breath for up to 4 minutes at a time for his underwater role as the gill man. The director's logic was that the air would have to travel through the monster's gills and thus air bubbles from his mouth or nose would not be seen. The costume was designed without an air tank. In the subsequent films, the detail was ignored and air can be seen emanating from the top of the creature's head. So I kind of talked about that, but he literally had to hold his breath for like 4 minutes.
That's insane.
I don't know
That's
how you
impressive.
could fucking do that.
When I was younger and I was swimming a lot, at most all I could do was like a minute.
Yeah.
And
You could-
that's a lot.
Do like a minute 30.
Like some of it might be
maybe
psychological, but damn, 4 fucking minutes. All right, the last fun fact I have, another Rico Browning. I have a crush on him apparently because all
2.
my
He's
fun facts
adorable.
included
He's
him.
So attractive.
Yeah, I had actually forgotten about that photo until you showed it to me.
Now I'm like, I'm gonna look up some more.
I think he might be the reason why I was fascinated with the creature. Like, honestly, because I think I've seen that picture several times. Okay,
Lauren's like, yes, the creature.
the creature.
Hello, Riku.
Riku. Okay.
I'm sure that also helped me along
Riku,
too.
come to me. All right. Riku Browning once had to make an emergency bathroom visit while he was filming a scene. Browning had to be...
not to shit my pants.
Oh,
And he
no.
has that bodysuit on. It's worse than like... What are those things? The jumpsuits?
Leotards?
Yeah, like things you gotta fucking
like
take
the
all way off.
rompers?
Yeah, the rompers.
Ugh.
So he was filming a scene. He had to take a shit or something. All right. Browning had been underwater for several minutes and breached the water in full costume next to an unsuspecting mother and her young daughter on the nearby shore.
No, I bet they got the life scared out of him.
Oh, no.
Browning said that they fled in terror once they saw him. He recalled, quote, "They took off and that's the last that I saw of them." So I thought that was cute.
That is cute.
So yeah, that's all I got. But basically, I know we already kind of talked about it, but I really liked...
Apparently he died last year.
Aww.
Yeah.
He's fucking adorable.
Look at him.
He's handsome.
R.I.P. Riku Browning. Oh,
Yeah.
he is adorable. He probably had some stories to tell.
Yep, February 27th of last year.
Dang.
Of
Well, when this
2023.
comes out,
So it'll be, 2023. Oh, it'll be February.
yep,
It'll be 2 years.
we are going to be posting this the month that he passed, like
Yeah.
his Death Month.
Hmm.
But
Rest in peace.
rest in peace. But anyway, is there anything else you want to talk about the movie? I really enjoyed it. I
think
liked
I was
it.
just impressed by the fact that they were able to pull that off. And it looked so good and natural with him swimming underwater. And
It
like
was
there was
really-
very few bubbles.
Yeah, it looks really good.
And the costume itself, like
Mm-hmm.
all the shots, like they had a lot of claw shots of his arm, like.
It just like comes in with a fucking hand
But
or whatever.
it was detailed. I was like, that is a claw.
Even
if
like-
I ever saw one.
Like the skeleton they find in like the mud bank or whatever. Like in the beginning. Like even that was super detailed. And I was like, I don't know if I would go looking for whatever that had
Yeah.
attached to it. Because that's terrifying.
Well, I don't think they were just looking for like more of it, right?
Yeah, they weren't looking to find a live one. They were
Because they
looking
probably
for,
didn't
like,
think it existed.
Yeah.
skeleton.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And honestly, this is just dumb me, but until I watched the movie, I thought he was part reptilian. And then I watched
mean,
it like,
he
oh wait,
looks-
no, he's half fish. He's not half reptile.
I mean, he's
So
got
whenever I
scales
saw
and
his
stuff,
gills
but, you know,
moving,
so
whenever he was out of water and shit, I was like, dude, that's so fucking cool.
Well,
I
I
was
mean, an
impressed with
axolotl
that.
is a reptile technically, right? And they have gills.
I don't know what axolotls are.
And salamanders.
Oh, but they don't have that kind of that skin. They
Are
have
they
soft little gooey
amphibians?
skins.
They're squishy.
I love them.
They're so cute.
I used to have salamanders. You remember Toxic and Polluti? That was their nicknames. They were Popsy and Toluti, but Dad called him Toxic and Polluti because he had really gross water. But he's more fish than reptile.
Yeah.
I think. But I loved all the scenes with his costume because you could tell, like, people were like, this costume's fucking awesome. So there was so many, like, close-up shots of his claw. And then even the ones of his face were really cool. And, like, the underwater shot whenever she's swimming and then he's swimming underneath her.
Yeah.
Like,
it's
that
so
one was
good.
really cool. There was so many cool fucking shots. There's a shot where, like, they're in the boat, but they're, like, under. And then you see him walking past the window. I was like, dude.
Mhm.
It was really good.
Like, it was a really cool movie.
Yeah.
It just seemed kind of technical at the time too for them to
Yeah.
shoot that because all the underwater stuff, like that seems like it probably wasn't easy because the film
Having a
cameras
camera,
were clunky
yep.
and shit. So
There's probably way more that wasn't even included in this book about, like, the shooting of it. That was just, like,
Mhm.
amazing.
Honestly, it's still pretty much
It holds
like
up.
it fucking holds water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It was good.
Yep.
It was good.
Well, that's all I got.
yeah,
Book rating?
Hmm.
Out of 5? We're doing it out of 5?
I'm going to say 4. 4 fins.
I mean, out of 5. We're
I
doing
know.
it. Okay.
I'm
You say
giving
4
it
out of 5.
4 fins.
4 out of 5 fins. Sam?
God, now I feel bad. I'm gonna do a 3.5 out of 3.5 fins.
I'm honestly gonna do a 4.5. I really liked it. I was pretty impressed with Mallory's writing, mostly because I was tickled several times. I think she did a great job doing like the historical research. Milicent is a very interesting person, and I think that Mallory tackled feminism in a very positive way and not the gross way that sometimes happens. So I think 4.5 out of 5. Like, there were a couple of problematic things, but I think that they were even addressed. Like, the problematic things I think were addressed by Mallory in the book. Like, it was just problematic ways of thinking
Yeah, I
that
think
she kind of overcame with growth.
definitely grew. I saw that in the interview where it listed her interviews that she had her interview with Gwen in 2016. So the book wasn't published till 2019. So she obviously had some time in there to like kind of rethink some stuff. So
Yeah. So I don't know. I really liked the whole idea of it. I think she showed a lot of growth. I think that she captured Milicent very well.
Yeah, I think so. And
with
it was
what
a
she
story
had
that
available.
that was hidden that needed to be told. So I think out of everything, the fact that she actually uncovered that is a feat
Yeah.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Like, I'm glad that we did this one, even though I gave it the least amount of rating. Like,
That's okay.
because it's something I didn't know.
Yeah.
Like, so I got to learn something new, which I'm always a fan of. And I mean, you guys haven't necessarily liked the books I've picked. So,
Yeah.
you know, it happens.
I have not hated your books. I like your books.
I love
how we just go into some of these blind too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
I only didn't like the one book so far. Like, I've liked all of them. And I didn't hate the book, though. I just thought it was unnecessarily filthy.
well, same. I didn't hate Jojo Rabbit.
made me
It was not
uncomfortable.
my favorite. Anyway.
It's fine.
I will say, if one of you wants to print off and frame that picture of Riku for
Is
me,
that-
I will put that in my bedroom properly.
This one is a... Oh, Joe. Or the other one, this one?
I like the fish one best.
All of
It is like
them.
gulp, gulp eyes.
He is so cute.
Right?
Oh, I love it. All right. Well, until next time, keep the pages turning and the drinks flowing. Audio engineering, logo creation, and social media content was produced by Lauren Rainey with Rainey Film and Video. Stock music tracks have been provided by Adobe Stock. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at Liquor&Literature Podcast, where you can dive into more details about the books, authors, and movies we cover. You can find all of our episodes at liquorliteraturepodcast.podbean.com. Until next time, keep the pages turning and the drinks flowing.